I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. We are covering the Sarah Boone case, and I just want to make sure that you all are taking care of your mental health as you watch all of this. I did not sleep well last night. I really felt like Dr. Harper's testimony really helped Sarah Boone. Even knowing that the prosecution has an expert that is currently testifying now. And so I'm not going to go over all of Dr. Harper's testimony. I'm just going to talk about a few key aspects, and then we're going to switch over to catch up with the defense expert, and then we're going to compare the two because this is what the jury is going to have to do. I also have my DSM 5, and I will be able to share my screen and share with you all some of the information, because when Dr. Harper said that you couldn't diagnose that within like so I heard it like within narcissistic personality disorder, that you couldn't diagnose that if there was PTSD. And I went to my DSM and I was like, ma'am, where? Because I've heard of people being diagnosed with both PTSD and a personality disorder. And so I was thoroughly confused. But then I went to the PTSD section of the DSM 5, and one of the differential diagnoses is personality disorders. So if the trauma reaction is better explained by a recent trauma, then that would be different. What I think her testimony doesn't account for, in my opinion, I think this doesn't account for what happens with Sarah Boone's personality before she met George. And I hope and pray the prosecution, the state, is calling Brian Boone to talk about. I think Sarah Boone has likely had narcissistic personality traits since she was probably but I don't know this for sure. I From what I've heard of her relationship with Brian, he could allege that he was the victim of emotional harm. I I personally feel that way. So we are going to see what he says on the stand for Mufasa's illegitimate son. So I am live right now. Dr. Harper testified yesterday. So we are going to briefly cover a few points from her testimony, and then we're going to hop over to court today. So we'll be able to zoom through some of the breaks and things. I'm also going to zoom through the experts' history. Okay. So Dr. Harper is very qualified. I personally think she came across credible with the jury, but I thought she came across like she's on Sarah's side. So I also have a video by Dr. Ramani keyed up once we get to a place where we can play that, where Dr. Ramani talks about covert or vulnerable narcissism. I personally feel a lot of what Dr. Ramani says in that video describes Sarah Boone to a T. And Dr. Harper could have looked at Sarah Boone's jail notes. She could have looked at the letter she submitted to the court. She could have looked at all of these other things that I think shows that Sarah Boone continues to exhibit narcissistic traits way past her alleged harmful relationship with George. So we are going to hop in. She is going to correct the defense, because the defense is almost going to call her a hired hand, and she's going to be like, no, sir, no, I'm not. So,
and would it be fair to say that a lot of times you're appointed by the court to provide the service that you provide, and you're paid by the state?
That's correct.
What percentage of your work is where you're paid by the government to do the work?
I would say that the majority of my work comes through with that court-appointed funding. Percentage-wise, probably about 90%.
Okay. I realize you testify on occasion by the state, but majority of your time, 90%, 95% of the time, you testify on the behalf of the defense?
Yes, the evaluation's complete, and either side can call me for testimony, and the majority of the time I'm called by defense.
And so you make a living by traveling the state, and generally the court system, I think they call it JAC, pays your fees.
That was an offensive question, and I don't think Owens realizes that was kind of an offensive question, but she's going to correct it very kindly.
So I make a living by performing work as a forensic psychologist, evaluating individuals most of the time that are incarcerated in a prison or a jail setting, providing consultation to attorneys who might just have questions that would need a psychological expert to explain something to them. I also do fitness for duty evaluations for law enforcement, pre-employment evaluations for law enforcement and firefighters. So depending on the work that's needed, I do those.
Doctor, how is a forensic psychological evaluation
This is a good point.
different than a regular psychological evaluation?
So I do clinical evaluations. I have done some for court settings, but I always tell the court, I am a clinical psychologist. I'm not forensic. So I've never assessed somebody saying, should they be, were they sane at the time of the crime? Because that would be a forensic evaluation. I've assessed people in custody hearings or involved with DSS for some reason to say, does this person meet criteria for a mental health disorder? And within those evaluations, you always have to be aware that people can lie. And I don't know that her test went far enough to identify potential malingering. That's my own personal thought. And so she did, it was fine. Like what she did was fine, but it could have went a little further to dig deeper into Sarah's personality, because I misspoke on the Lawyer You Know stream last night. So I was in the comments and I thought she said that she had given Sarah a personality test, but she didn't. And we will talk about the 3 tests that she gave Sarah Boone as part of this 9-session psychological assessment. 9 sessions is a lot. 9 is a lot.
Can you tell the jury?
Sure. So if
They're supposed
any of
to
us went into a psychologist's office and had an evaluation done, it would be most likely for treatment. So things like if you qualify for surgery or you're going to have treatment, maybe you've got a condition that you want therapy for. A psychological assessment is very helpful in identifying a diagnosis and then setting a course for treatment.
That's what I do.
A forensic psychological evaluation has many of the same procedures, but the aim is really different.
The goal.
The aim would be to answer some kind of legal question that is posed. So as an expert, I might be in the position to provide some education or experiential descriptions of something that a person might be suffering from to people that are going to make a decision. So for instance, if it's a competency evaluation, I would educate the fact finder. In that case, it would be a judge about what is wrong with the person, or if they had any deficits at all, or if they were competent to proceed. In a situation like this, a forensic psychological evaluation might be geared more to identifying, again, if there is a mental health condition present in the defendant I'm evaluating, and then to provide a jury with education about what I found in my evaluation.
All right, so I'm going to skip ahead to where she starts talking. So I have 50909 for some reason, and I didn't put why. So we're going to see why I thought this part was important. All right, let's see.
As it relates to Sarah Boone to review?
Yes, I have it.
How many times did you meet with Sarah Boone?
That's why.
So
9 times.
9 times.
9 times.
Can you tell the jury what you did as part of your evaluation of Sarah Boone?
Well, we had clinical forensic interview in which I reviewed her background history, so her early childhood. I also assessed her with assessments, meaning I administered 3 psychological tests to her. I reviewed her prior mental health records, her interrogation video, some prior information about her legal history. So she had been previously arrested. I reviewed that as well. We had an opportunity to review the transcript of her interrogation video. So there were a variety of things that would.
I felt she was very sympathetic to Sarah Boone, I thought. And then the jury may feel like the state expert went in, I don't know, like the jury might feel that the state expert wasn't as, because she comes across as kind, and I don't know, like she will play the state's expert, and probably, so we should get there soon. But okay.
Be considered what I did with her.
Okay. So you considered some medical records?
Yes,
And did you also consider some records from Jorge Torres's records?
I did see his hospital records.
Now, do you consider, in doing an assessment and forming any opinions, an individual like Ms. Boone's upbringing in terms of where they grew up and what their family environment was like?
Yes, that's part of gathering their background,
No more than three
history.
emojis.
So biopsychosocial information.
And did you consider Ms. Boone's upbringing
They're gonna
in
object.
forming any opinions?
I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So of her,
And this is where I wonder if Sarah reported some history of childhood trauma or something, because the state is going to object and she is not going to be able to testify about this part. I did want to, because Owens is going to bring up the narcissistic traits that she observed with Sarah Boone. So let's go from here.
And did you consider her relationship with her mother as part of her psychological development?
yes,
Now, do you believe that Sarah Boone does have some narcissistic traits?
I do.
She doesn't qualify or meet the.
So to me, she seemed, now that's where I wonder how she felt saying this in front of Sarah Boone, because she seemed to me, my own personal thing, talking about the narcissistic traits that she observed. To me, she seemed a little uncomfortable talking about that to me personally.
Criteria for that diagnosis, does she?
I did not diagnose her with that.
Can you elaborate on or explain how you feel that Sarah Boone does have some narcissistic traits?
Well, in meeting with her as part of the evaluation, the narcissistic traits that I identified would have to do
We sound
with,
flaky.
as she described, being a straight A student. She reiterated about her abilities, and I
Over and
felt
over.
that that was evidence that she had low self-esteem, and her coping mechanism
Hey, Lisa.
was to identify what made her stand out, and that would be consistent with a narcissistic trait.
Now, I know there's been reference in this case to a manual that all
DSM-5.
psychologists, all psychiatrists refer
DSM-5 TR.
The text
relating to when you suffer from narcissism, there's a sense of grandiosity. But is that from this manual?
Now, to me, this question is going to be he's going to try to explain away Sarah's grandiosity, and it's in a way that I don't know. So I'm going to listen to it, and then I'll let y'all know my thoughts.
In your studies and your experience, where they require excessive admiration and whatnot, there's a reason for that.
I am.
If I'm understanding your question, there's a criterion in narcissistic personality disorder related to that.
What I'm getting to is many times you may have these narcissistic traits, but really you suffer from very low self-esteem.
That's the underpinning of that criterion.
Would you explain that to me?
If I'm allowed to reference the DSM, then I can explain it best.
Just don't read from it. Just
All
you
right.
need to review. If you need to read a paragraph and then explain it to the jury.
So based on the description in the DSM, if a person's self-esteem is very fragile and they have low self-esteem, they may require more outside admiration or even appear more grandiose in their abilities, because at root, they don't feel secure and confident. And so it's what we would call a defense. And so that criterion is actually a way that a person tries to make themselves feel better.
Anything else you want to say about that issue?
Well, you asked me about why I didn't diagnose narcissistic personality
Wants to go into
disorder.
more.
And again, from the DSM,
Are there criteria?
there are criterion for each disorder.
He's interrupting her.
When you're assessing someone, they have to meet all those criteria for you to
That's-
form that opinion
that's
that
not
they
why she
actually
didn't
suffer
diagnose
from
it.
that disorder.
Well, the first, I guess, issue is, do they have the criterion that are listed? And then the second would be, is there a different mental health disorder that would better explain the criterion that you're seeing? The criterion within the DSM overlap considerably across disorders. And so there are some helpful guidelines within the DSM to remind you of that you may have what's called differential diagnosis. So if you're considering one thing, that you also are directed to look at other things. So that happened in this case, in this instance, that the DSM guided me to also look at other things.
But just for purposes, to make it clear, you did not diagnose her as with narcissism, that disorder.
That's correct, because the DSM's description guided me that would not be an appropriate diagnosis.
Why did you not diagnose Miss Bing with a personality disorder?
If you'd let her talk, she'd get
Well,
there.
first of all, it has to be a pervasive pattern of distorted relational abilities. So
Feel like
basically, if
that's a check.
she is demonstrating in a variety of settings that she has these symptoms.
I think so.
And then secondarily, the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder is listed when you're considering personality disorders. The DSM guides you that if there are personality changes that are associated with the exposure to a trauma,
We're going to
then
look
you
at
should
this.
consider post-traumatic stress disorder and not a personality disorder.
So when she said that, I was like, huh? Because I know people that are diagnosed with both, but I wanted to pull up this part because I think she is saying that Sarah exhibits PTSD because of the relationship with George, and that the narcissistic traits came out of that 3-year relationship. And okay. So symptoms of PTSD: exposure to a traumatic event, presence of one or more of the following symptoms: recurrent, involuntary, intrusive, distress memories. This is the DSM-5. So I have a PDF version. This is the DSM-5. Recurrent distressing dreams in which the content and/or, good gosh, I want this to go away. Just let me see it. It's fine. Okay, I'll get over it. Recurrent distressing dreams in which the content and/or effect of the dream is related to traumatic events. Dissociative reactions like flashbacks. Intense or prolonged psychological distress to exposure. Marked physiological reactions to internal or external cues. And then there is also avoidance system. There are also avoidance symptoms. And then there can be negative alterations in cognitions and mood. And that's where they talk about that irritability, persistent or exaggerated negative beliefs, such as negative feelings about oneself, the world, no one can be trusted, persistent, distorted cognitions about the cause or consequences of the traumatic event, like blaming oneself, persistent negative emotional state, fear, anger, guilt, or shame, marked diminished interest and participation in activities, feelings of detachment or estrangement from others, persistent inability to experience positive emotions. There can also be arousal symptoms such as irritable behavior and angry outbursts, reckless or self-destructive behavior. Self-sabotage is sometimes listed, hypervigilance, exaggerated startle response, problems with concentration, and issues with sleep disturbance. And so some other dissociative symptoms can be depersonalization or derealization. I believe I have another video where I went into that a little bit more. The DSM-5 made specific criteria for children because children, the threshold in the DSM-4 was so high that a lot of children that were clearly experiencing PTSD based on the criteria at the time, they were not meeting criteria for that diagnosis. And so they adjusted the symptoms for children to better reflect and capture things. But I do want to get to the differential diagnosis portion because this is where I found what she's talking about. Under PTSD, this is not listed in my DSM under narcissism, under that personality disorder. It doesn't say if the person meets these criteria, and so associated features, prevalence, development in course, risk factors. Okay. Culture related issues, sex and gender differences, differential diagnosis. So this is where I found. All right. Is this the personality part? Let's see. Personality disorders. Interpersonal difficulties that had their onset or were greatly exacerbated after exposure to a traumatic event may be an indication of PTSD rather than a personality disorder, in which such difficulties would be expected independently of any traumatic experience. So I personally feel these are my thoughts. I did not meet with or assess Sarah Boone, and I am not an expert in this case. I do work with individuals with PTSD. I've mentioned on here before, individuals with narcissistic personality disorder rarely present for therapy, but I have worked with a parent that is exhibiting these types of traits because I'm working with their child. And so individuals with PTS, if her personality, if she had no history of narcissistic traits before meeting George, and then in the relationship with George, now she has these traits, yes, PTSD would be a better diagnosis. I think there is evidence of there being issues before this. And so we're gonna have to do a whole separate video on PTSD and children versus adults. That would be a whole separate video. Let's see. Now let's go down. All right. So let's get to her cross-examination. Share this. I'm laughing a little because at times she corrected I don't know, like he said belief instead of believes, and she corrected that. And okay. I don't know that I would have done that. But everybody's different. Everybody's different. So this is the cross-examination.
A person believes subjectively that they need to use some sort of force, deadly or non-deadly. You agree with that, correct?
I do.
And then there's also a second component that it's objectively reasonable to the ordinary person to use force, correct?
I understand what you're saying, yes.
And what I believe I heard you mention earlier about battered spouse syndrome was originally it was meant to help understand why people stay in these relationships.
Originally, yes.
Because it may not just be intuitive to somebody who doesn't understand these things, why somebody who is abused time and time and time again would remain in that relationship, correct?
That's right.
And again, and I know you're not a lawyer, But if the law has evolved about retreat and not having to retreat and so on and so forth, that kind of changes some of the lens of this, correct?
Judge, I'm going to object.
Yeah, he's
Approach.
going to object. I'm going to fast forward. through the-
Agree that hypothetically, if somebody is running down their partner, saying negative things about them, telling them they're unattractive, telling them things that would potentially hurt their feelings, that could be an element of control of a verbally abusive relationship.
Yes.
It could.
Propping one up, hypothetically saying, I'm the best thing that has ever happened to you. You'll never do better than me. Is that a potential component of the control that one in an abusive relationship might exert over an intimate partner?
Yes, to try to not encourage their partner to leave them. Yeah.
Considering gifts, hypothetically, that one partner has given to another
Talking
partner,
about the bike.
but considering it still to be your property because you gave it to them, is that a form of a potential exertion of control over an intimate partner? When you give somebody hypothetically a bike, but still consider it your own bike?
I mean, I don't think that's strong evidence of that. I think that it does happen in relationships and people do that in general, but I wouldn't say that's like really specific to this.
How about hypothetically exerting control over your intimate partner's identification papers, such as a birth certificate?
So that can happen. People will hide things that are required for work. For instance, like your driver's license or things like that.
Now I'm asking yes or no questions. If Mr. Owens would like you to elaborate further, he's going to have that opportunity in a little bit. Okay. Hypothetically, if one partner destroys another partner's belongings, is that a potential example of exerting control in a relationship?
Can be.
Yes.
Thank you. Hypothetically, is threatening to or actually using legal process as a threat against your intimate partner in a potential indicia of controlling your partner? For instance, X, Y, or Z, or I'm going to get you arrested.
Yes, I would agree that happens.
Now, I assume you would agree that this cycle of violence that we've described, the tension building, the blow up, and then the honeymoon phase, you would agree that just one of those cycles could be enough to give somebody a traumatic experience if they took it as a traumatic experience.
Yes.
The defendant described her first date with Mr. Torres to you, did she not?
She did.
I thought this was important.
And at the time of this first date, they had obviously just met that night at a bar, correct?
Right.
They were not financially intertwined, correct?
That's right.
They shared no children in common.
That's right.
They did not live together.
Correct.
And after this description that she provided you, which included him smashing her phone, correct?
Yes.
Hitting her, first time she'd ever been hit in her life, correct?
Yes.
Making her crouch in like a fetal position on the porch for several hours to the point where it hurt her back, correct?
Yes.
I think it's interesting that none of this came up when she was during her testimony. So you would want to know about the first instance. I don't remember this. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. I don't remember her going into this incident on direct. I thought she described the first time she met him being, amazed that he would be into someone like her because she was in her sweats. It would be very rare. The only person I could see doing something like this is somebody like Wade Wilson, who to me is a malignant narcissist, is aggressive and harmful from the very start and tries to use his attractiveness and charm. I I I did not get that sense about her relationship with George. I do not think that on their first date that he did. I don't so we don't know the truth. And the jury is going to have to figure this out. It would be odd on a first date for there to be violence. Normally within the cycle, you start with the honeymoon phase. Normally the harm doesn't start until they have you hooked. And there's normally love bombing, or like the relationship is amazing at the start. The very first date, it's normally, oh my gosh, it's maybe they pay, maybe they go above and beyond, they're talking about having your kid, or they're like talking about getting married. But I don't see this happening on the first date. This just doesn't make sense to me. And I like that the state is pointing it out.
Threatened to sodomize her,
What?
Correct.
I missed that the
and
first
she
time.
described that she was all bruised up, correct?
Yes.
After that, this is the first time she had ever met him, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
There was a second date, correct?
Yes.
Despite not having any of that intertwinement that we went through prior to this description, correct?
That's right.
That would be very rare. I have only seen this in very severe cases where the victim has like an extremely so Sarah's low self-esteem, she can come off as kind of confident at times. She can kind of mask her low self-esteem. I don't see her staying if he was aggressive with her on the very first date. Y'all tell me in the chat if y'all think something different. Were there any other questions with this testimony? I am going to review the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder since I have my handy dandy DSM right here. So, narcissistic personality disorder is a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, need for admiration, and lack of empathy beginning in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by 5 or more of the following. And I agree. I don't think Sarah has 5. I think she has 4. So this expert's going to say 3. I think she might have 4, but has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. Yes. Is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people. And I think on direct, this expert said no to this one, but in the state beautifully impeached her with her deposition. That's why those depositions are so important because during her deposition, she said yes to that one. So she corrected her answer to yes. Requires excessive admiration, has a sense of entitlement, like snacks and like makeup artist and hairstylist. Oh my gosh. Unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations, is interpersonally exploitive, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own needs, lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings or needs of others, is envious of others or believes that others are envious of him and her. Now, everybody has envy. So I am jealous of like Dr. Kolpsel's, not doctor, Detective Kolpsel's hair is just gorgeous. And she's a beautiful, gorgeous person. So, but with narcissism, that envy and jealousy, it can become it can go deeper than just normal jealousy or envy. Shows arrogant or haughty behaviors or attitude. I'm interested to see what the state expert says. Does she think that Sarah meets criteria for this one? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So in the DSM-5, individuals with narcissistic personality disorder believe that they are special or unique and expect others to recognize them as such. They can be surprised or even devastated when the recognition of a claim they expect and feel they deserve from others is not forthcoming. They may feel that they can only be understood by and should only associate with people of high status and may attribute unique, perfect, or gifted qualities to those with whom they associate. Individuals with this disorder believe that their needs are special and beyond the ken of ordinary people. Their own self-esteem is enhanced, mirrored by the individualized value that they assign to those with whom they associate. They are likely to insist on only having the top person. Like they want to talk. So Sarah Boone wanting the email address for the jail lawyer. Sarah Boone wanting to talk to, like, she's asking for the supervisor all the time. Like she's like, wait a minute, I don't talk to lowly staff. I need a supervisor. Individuals with this disorder generally require excessive admiration. Their self-esteem is almost invariably very fragile, and their struggle with severe internal self-doubt, self-criticism, and emptiness results in their need to actively seek others' admiration. They may be preoccupied with how well they are doing and how favorably they are regarded by others, particularly the media. I could be wrong, but I think she's more concerned with the media than she may be with the jury. I don't know. They may expect their arrival to be greeted with great fanfare and are astonished if others do not covet their possessions. They may constantly fish for compliments, often with great charm. A sense of entitlement, which is rooted in their distorted sense of self-worth, is evident in these individuals' unreasonable expectation of especially favorable treatment. They expect to be catered to and are puzzled or furious when this does not happen. For example, they may assume that they do not have to wait in line and that their priorities are so important that others should defer to them, and then get irritated when others fail to assist in their very important work. They may expect to be given whatever they want or feel they need, no matter what it might mean to others. For example, these individuals may expect great dedication from others and may overwork them without regard for the impact on their lives, like their lawyers. They might expect to talk to their lawyer every day for 6 hours a day because their case is so important. Now, if you're in jail, you want to be able to communicate with your lawyer. And so that's where some of her expectations are understandable, but in my opinion, Sarah takes it to the extreme. This sense of entitlement, combined with a lack of understanding and sensitivity to the wants and needs of others, may result in the conscious or unwitting exploitation of others. And I I I feel okay, I'm gonna keep reading. They tend to form relationships or romantic relationships only if the other person seems likely to advance their purposes or otherwise enhance their self-esteem. So that's where her being like, "Oh, he was so handsome. He was," I don't know, like her building him up somehow. Like, how could he like little old me? Okay. They often usurp special privileges and extra resources that they believe they deserve. Some individuals with an NPD intentionally and purposely take advantage of others emotionally, socially, intellectually, or financially for their own purposes and gains. Individuals with NPD generally have a lack of empathy and are unwilling to recognize or identify with the desires, subjective experiences, and feelings of others. They tend to have some degree of cognitive empathy, understanding another's person's perspective on an intellectual level, but lack emotional empathy, directly feeling the emotions that another person is feeling. These individuals may be oblivious to the hurt their remarks may inflict. Uh, so telling a former lover, I am now in the relationship of a lifetime, boasting boasting of health in front of someone who's sick. And so to me, the things that Sarah has said about Brian have been belittling to him. And to me, Brian was probably one of the best relationships she ever had. but he didn't allow her to. He set a boundary of, you need to work on your drinking, and she continued to not do that, and he was like, we can't be married anymore. And okay. Those who relate to individuals with NPD typically find an emotional coldness and lack of reciprocal interest. I hear that on the Wade Wilson calls, where sometimes when he asks how the other person's day is, he knows that that's what you're supposed to do, but he doesn't always sound genuinely interested unless they're like going to work and he knows that they're like going to give him money. These individuals are often envious of others or believe that others are envious of them. They may begrudge others their success or possessions, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Associated features, vulnerability and self-esteem makes individuals with NPD very sensitive to criticism or defeat. Although they may not show it outwardly, such experiences may leave them feeling ashamed, humiliated, degraded, hollow, and empty. And I think you saw that at the end of her interrogation. So now prevalence. A full narcissistic personality disorder. This disorder is rare. People that meet criteria for full NPD is rare. Now, traits of some of these things, and then also, like, just because someone's a jerk doesn't mean that they're a narcissist. And so I want to be very careful. I talk a lot about the spectrum of narcissism, and this is where I feel like a lot of this explains what we see with Sarah Boone and not borderline personality disorder. And we're not going to get into that full diagnosis today, but I often get people screaming in the chat that they feel she has that one. All right. Gender differences. Gender differences in adults with this disorder include stronger reactivity in response to stress and compromised empathic processing in men, as opposed to self-focus and withdrawal in women. Okay, so that's just something they noted. Differential diagnosis. And so this is where I did not see in any of this a differential diagnosis for PTSD. I did say to consider obsessive compulsive personality disorder, but within narcissistic personality disorder, that perfectionism is more about the ego than about like things being a certain way. So, however, while those with obsessive compulsive personality disorder tend to be immersed in perfectionism related to order and rigidity, individuals with NPD tend to set high perfectionistic standards, especially for appearance and performance, and tend to be critically concerned if they are not measuring up. There can be a suspiciousness, hypomania or hypomania can get, and then also substance use disorders. NPD can be distinguished in association from persistent substance use and then persistent depressive disorder. Comorbidity, it's common to have it with depression, substance use, having eating issues. So trigger warning for eating, but yeah. All right. Whew. All right. So I'm going to come back to the chat to see if we have, I don't see questions. Sarah counted 8. Some people are winning bingo. All right. So now let's get to today's testimony. All right. So this is today's testimony. Dr. Werner is a forensic psychiatrist. And I zoomed past her talking about her experience. She mentioned, she name drops Yale. So like she did something with Yale, maybe a fellowship or something. I don't know. She did something in Connecticut at Yale. And which is like, that's a big deal within psychiatry. It can be difficult to get fellowships. Psychiatry versus psychology. So Dr. Werner is a forensic psychiatrist. She is a medical doctor, and she is going to go into alcohol and the effects of alcohol on the body. And as a medical doctor, she has more training than I do and just exactly how that affects things. Now, because I took substance training, like I took a course and I get additional continuing education in it, I do have I do have education about it, but it's more from a psychological side and not a medical side. Psychiatrists also diagnose. In my area, often psychiatrists don't do psychological testing in my area, and they often refer to a psychologist if somebody has something like ADHD, or if they're trying to figure out what might be going on. They often refer to a psychologist for a clinical evaluation. We didn't get so sorry. And with Dr. Harper's testimony, so she gave her 2 malingering tests, and one of the malingering tests was the Miller forensic something or other. And when I looked it up, it's like a 25 question test, and Sarah did not elevate anything on that. She gave her another malingering test. So malingering is lying. So you want to test to see if people are lying. And but then she also, so this was Dr. Harper, the defense expert, also gave her the clinical PTSD interview. And I want to say that was the one that Dr. Julie gave as well, but it's based on the person's self-report. And I would have wanted to see an MMPI or a personality assessment inventory. I would have wanted to see an assessment of her personality if we're going to say that these symptoms are because of her PTSD and not because of an underlying personality condition. Because sometimes you can ask the person, answer these questions like before you met him. So answer them, you know, if she was trying to rule out, I wonder what her personality functioning was before, but there wasn't a lot of motivation to do that. So uh, those are the questions I have.
May the record reflections identify the defendant.
Record so reflect.
What date did you have an evaluation of Ms. Boone?
It was early in October, I believe October 2nd.
And this was at the request of the state of Florida
Yes, it was.
and subject to a court order?
Yes.
And who was present for this evaluation?
The defense and the prosecution.
All right. Tell us about the evaluation with Ms. Boone. What do you do first?
So I met with Ms. Boone at the jail in a conference room. Again, the prosecution was there and her attorney. I met with her for approximately 2.5 hours, just under 2.5 hours. I introduced my.
I wonder if the jury is going to think, because Dr. Harper met with her 9 times. I would love to know the hours of this. I would love to know, what are the hours? Like, what are the combined hours for those 9 sessions? 9 sessions sounds like a lot to me personally. And I don't know. So Sarah never clearly said what George said that made her angry. So she just said something to the effect of, he said something and I got mad, but Dr. Harper didn't ask her exactly what he said. And to me, in a forensic evaluation, you would want to know exactly what was said. So I'm not a forensic psychologist, but if I was just doing a clinical assessment, I would have asked what was said that triggered this behavior. So when I'm meeting with clients and they have aggression at school, I ask, I try to get the details. And if my client says somebody on the playground said something mean to me, I'm going to ask them, what did they say? Like what was said? Like, and so that was odd to me. It protects Sarah because I personally feel like she doesn't remember what happened in those 9 minutes, and she needed something. And I don't think I think Sarah said, "Oh, I now have this memory of what happened." But she was never asked. And okay. Okay. So with forensic assessments, the state, so this was the state's expert. So the state was there, I think, because of time. So court was supposed to start October 7th. Do y'all remember that? Like, so she met with Sarah on October 1st. I think we were supposed to have court October 7th. So I think the state was there because they wanted to make sure that they had everything they needed. And the defense was there in support of Sarah. Like they also just wanted to see how everything went. And so with a forensic assessment, Natalie Lawyer Chick has said when her client, so Natalie Lawyer Chick is a defense attorney. And when her client has a psychological assessment, she is often there. Now, the defense attorney should not interject. Now, if the client has a legal question, the defense attorney can answer a legal question. Or if the defense attorney has a question for, like, can you make sure that, these types of questions or that we get this type of information, but they shouldn't be interfering with the assessment. Like, that's my understanding from other lawyers and other forensic evaluators.
Myself and explained that the interview would not be confidential, that I would be coming to court if asked to share my opinions. And she agreed to participate.
Trigger warning for ums, and it's okay. So I say like, and so I say things like I have my filler words and her filler word is Sometimes to the jury, I thought the defense experts were very eloquent and they spoke very well and it was very easy to follow. At one point, her voice is going to get really dry and I wish somebody had given her some water. Like she very clearly is going to need some water and nobody's going to I haven't watched the full thing. I hope she ended up getting some water.
I then start out with just general information. So getting to know her, date of birth, kind of background information, who her parents are, childhood. I go through her educational background, work background, her marital background. I go through health, psychiatric background, any substance use issues. I do a mental status examination.
Can I stop you there?
Mental status.
Elaborate further on that.
So a mental status examination is just questions to determine kind of memory and cognition, kind of how their thought process is, how they're thinking. Are they able to kind of fluidly think through processes?
All right, go on after that.
And then I transition from there into walking through the incident that happened with her.
All right, what did she indicate occurred on February 23rd, 2020 to you?
All right, is it all right if I refer to my notes just to make?
Just if you need them to refresh your memory, please do so, but don't read from them. Just let us know.
So she had a difficult time recalling what time they actually woke up that day. Initially, she said in the morning, and then she said she wasn't even sure that it was in the morning. She said that they both wanted to drink, but that she asked that they could clean the house first instead, and that they did some vacuuming and cleaning. They had a half a bottle of wine left over from the day before that they drank. She felt about 4:00 in the afternoon. They drank that out on the back porch. And she described that they had kind of 2 beach chairs out there and a dartboard, and that they kind of hung out there a lot on the back porch, spent time out there.
So in Sarah's direct testimony, it was he wanted to drink and she offered because they need to feel accomplished. So that doesn't make any sense. Like to me, like as a reward, like it really felt, and somebody said this in Recovery Addicts chat, like she was his babysitter or something. Like I have to entertain him so he has good behavior. And to me, that's not how you describe interactions with a partner. It's just not.
They did a puzzle out there and completed that, and then did some kind of artwork. She felt like he was getting frustrated thinking about his life, that he had lost his job. And so she encouraged him to call his daughters, although she knew that that they did not like to talk to him when he was drinking. So I'm not sure why she had encouraged him to call them at that point, because they were already drinking. And she also at some point encouraged him to call his brother, because she wanted him to explain to his brother that he had pulled her down the stairs the night before, although that didn't happen. He didn't explain that to the brother. And
her mentioning the pulling down the stairs, that's where I wonder, because I thought she said, tell him about choking me. I did think it was dragging me down the stairs. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. I thought it was tell him about choking me. I didn't hear tell him about dragging me down the stairs. I feel like Sarah's trying to explain what the neighbors heard and make them seem less credible.
according to her. And then at some point, they went and got another bottle of wine and some cigarettes from the grocery store and continued to drink. And then they were inside the house. And then he, I guess, tagged her at some point and said, "Tag, you're it," which indicated that they were going to play hide and seek. And she said she went upstairs and hid in the shower and waited for him to come, and he never came upstairs. Excuse me. And so she eventually came out of the shower to look for him. And as she was coming down the stairs, she said she saw him slipping into a suitcase, which was on the living room floor, that they had put out because they were going to donate it. And sorry. And so she went downstairs and indicated that she had found him, and they were kind of laughing. And she zipped the suitcase up, and they continued to laugh, she said, at that point. And they were having a good time and laughing and enjoying themselves and having a good time. And she said, and then she became angry. So, and she said she remembered what it felt like when he was choking her, and she became angry.
What did she do after she became angry?
I'm going to refer to my notes at this point.
If you refresh your memory, just
Yes.
put them down and then tell us what you remember.
She said that she shook the suitcase and that she lost control of it and it flipped.
And then what happened?
Then she said that he stuck two fingers out, and her son's baseball bat was sitting there, and she picked the bat up and hit his hand.
Then what happened?
And then she went upstairs and waited for him to come upstairs.
All right. Alcohol. Can you tell us what you know about the effects as a medical doctor of ethanol or alcohol on a human body?
Yes. So it causes intoxication, as we all know, and it causes disinhibition. It works on the frontal lobe of the brain and allows us to do things that we wouldn't.
I feel like she's the first person to bring up disinhibition. And I'm surprised because that was the first thing I thought was that alcohol lowers your inhibition, or the other word is disinhibition. And now it won't. So like, if I got really drunk, I'm not gonna like harm. I don't harm people. Now, if somebody's conscious mind is controlling their anger when they drink, they might be more angry. That's what the angry drunk. They're already an angry person. And when they're sober, they're able to control it. When they drink, they don't control it. And so, Jessica, I'm the same. I'm so glad that she mentioned it. Sarah, I am a very fast typer. I took keyboarding in 7th or 9th. I don't know. I took keyboarding in, it was either middle school or high school, maybe high school. I don't know, but I learned how to. So I type very fast. All right, let's keep it going.
Normally do. It disinhibits us.
And in the course of your practice, have you ever come across a diagnosis of alcohol abuse disorder?
Alcohol
Yes.
abuse.
And what is that?
Well, alcohol abuse is an old disorder. So we used to use alcohol dependence and alcohol abuse. It's now been combined in the DSM-5. In the DSM-5 TR, it's alcohol use disorder.
In considering what a patient or a client or somebody that you've been asked to evaluate by a government entity Do you take into account that person who's relaying the history to you's a consumption of alcohol at the time of the history that they're given?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because again, it affects their behavior and their actions.
Does alcohol have any effect on a person's memory?
It can.
What, if any, relationship is there between acute alcohol use or acute alcohol intoxication and battered spouse syndrome?
It can affect your memory. It can affect your reactions. It can affect your response to different things.
Does the disinhibitory nature of alcohol strengthen, weaken, or have no effect on battered spouse syndrome?
It would depend on each individual again.
Generally speaking, it is important as an evaluator to get as much information as possible before rendering an opinion, such as diagnosing somebody with something out of the DSM-5 TR or battered spouse syndrome.
Yes.
Yes.
In this particular case, did you require any additional information to reach your conclusion about the relationship between battered spouse syndrome and the events of this evening?
I based my opinion on the information that I had. Certainly, if there was more information, my opinion would be subject to change.
And what was your opinion?
My opinion was that she did not give me enough information to diagnose her with post-traumatic stress disorder at the time that I evaluated her at the jail.
I think the defense is going to
And
object.
specifically talking about
Yes.
The defense is going to object. She doesn't describe typical symptoms of PTSD to me. Now, if she knows the symptoms and she's asked about them, she might say yes. But I don't think I would have diagnosed PTSD. This is a long sidebar. I'm glad we're able to zoom. It goes. Wow.
And we don't want to have you all just hanging out waiting for us to figure out what we're going to do next. So I appreciate your patience. We're going to excuse you to the deliberation room at this time. Please do not
whoa.
conduct any independent investigation or research as to the person, places, things, or charge involved, and do not have any conversations amongst yourselves or anyone else about those things, and we'll bring you back in as promptly as possible. Thank you.
Okay, so they're gonna have to. I wonder if they're gonna. We haven't had any.
Y'all can be seated. Thank you. Mr. Owens, if you can find me that portion of the transcript that we were addressing as to in Dr. Werner's deposition that you believe we need to address.
Well, and Judge, it was
In Dr. Werner's deposition that you believe we need to address regarding this opinion as it relates to PTSD.
well, and Judge, it was
So let me clarify. So she just said that she did not have enough information to diagnose PTSD, but something must have happened in her deposition. So I think Owens objected and they excused the jury. And now they're going to talk about this outside of the presence of the jury. Yes, Owens definitely did not like her saying that she didn't have enough to diagnose PTSD. So let's listen to this part.
it applied to every opinion she was going to express. It started on page 37, line 24. As it relates to Sarah Boone, do you have any diagnosis as it relates to her? And then 38 is when she started talking about a generalized anxiety disorder,
Yes.
and that she was not for sure whether Sarah Boone had a generalized anxiety disorder versus if it was just an adjustment disorder to being in jail.
Okay.
And then she also
Because the very nature of being in jail can be a trauma, like that can create anxiety on its own. I do think there's evidence that Sarah had anxiety that was before her incarceration. So I might have went with, because I think she drank to cope with her anxiety. That's just my own personal thought. I did not assess her. I can't say that officially.
Also mentioned in that same answer that Sarah Boone had some narcissistic personality traits.
Yes.
And that those were my two major diagnoses. And then I questioned her further about that.
Okay. Did you ask her about
She explained to
PTSD?
me on line 17 about general anxiety disorder versus the adjustment disorder, and that I hadn't had time to fully formulate that opinion out. Line 21, I need time to go through my notes and think about it and process it.
Page. We're still on page 38.
38, line 21. I need time to go through my notes, think about it, process it. But I had other depositions, as you're aware, yesterday, so I had to prepare for those and go through that. So I have not had time to process on my notes. And I said on line 39, well, doctor, I'm trying not to inconvenience you. You know, we're set for trial October 7th for jury selection. Line 6, I anticipate your testimony would be until a little later. So we could discontinue the deposition and then reset it when you've got time to review. Because obviously I'm not going to want to take your deposition and you have other opinions that are not going to be covered. And then I asked,
So to me, she's talking about the differential diagnosis. She didn't think she had enough. We'll see. I guess Owens is upset that she's challenging the PTSD diagnosis that his expert gave. And he's smart to object. He is.
looks like Mr. J asked, what's your position? He said, conducting discovery after the jury trial starts is completely unacceptable to me. So that's my position. If she needs to issue a supplemental report, or if there has become a need for a second deposition, then we can address that. But it would be my position that we need to get this done because the state doesn't have any appellate rights once jury is sworn and jeopardy attaches. And I say on line 23 of page 39, well, you obviously understand my position. I'd like to finish the deposition today as well. But if she is holding out that she may have other opinions and other diagnosis after she has had more time to think,
He put this on
review
the record.
paperwork, then obviously that creates an issue. And then she said, but if that happens, I can bring that forward, and then you can add to your deposition at that point if my opinions change after having reviewed further. And I referred to Mr. J. Page 9 of 40, Mr. J says, I think we plow ahead. This is our time with her. Court reporter's prepared to give us a transcript by the end of the week. Something needs to be amended.
End of the weekend.
End of the weekend. If something needs to be amended, then she can A, issue a report. B, if we need to take a deposition and a deposition on the limited subject matter she is not prepared to testify about on today, then we can do that. But the notion of halting a deposition today that is set for 3 hours and then doing a 3-hour deposition during trial, especially after jeopardy is attached, is not what the state would do. Then I respond on page 40, line 23. I'm not suggesting that, Mr. J. I'm suggesting what you just said at the very beginning, which is let's finish. But if she has some supplement, then I would want to take a brief second deposition as it relates to any new diagnosis or opinions. Mr. J responds on page line 4. Okay. What I'm understanding her to say is right now, there has been a previous diagnosis of an adjustment disorder in some of the records, and she just needs to review her records to see if she thinks that is the best diagnosis that she would give as opposed to a generalized anxiety disorder. And then the witness says, you essentially flipped that, Mr. J, upside down. You got that backwards. So we go on to page 42. Line 1, Mr. Owens, I agree. And Dr. Werner, just let the state attorney know.
Yeah, but we're skipping a massive portion of 41
Okay,
that addresses specifically opinions
let me go back.
as it relates to generalized anxiety disorder.
Okay, the witness starts on line 15. So she's saying she has the generalized anxiety disorder, and I'm saying I want to review it more. Because Sarah Boone had disclosed to the doctor that she had been previously diagnosed with a generalized anxiety disorder.
Okay.
And so the Dr. Werner was considering that admission. But she was saying, I want to review it more to see if I think it's more of an adjustment disorder to being a jail judge, to being in the correctional setting right now. And
So, but generalized anxiety disorder would trump an adjustment disorder. And adjustment disorders are typically That's where it can get a bit sticky. So if somebody meets criteria for generalized anxiety disorder, you would typically diagnose that. Adjustment disorder is really common when you're first coming into treatment because it's a billable diagnosis while the therapist kind of figures out what's going on. You typically don't bill for it for longer than 6 months because after that, you've figured out, is this major depression? Is it, like, have the symptoms resolved and we've closed out treatment? Is it generalized anxiety? Like, what's going on?
The stressors that she is under right now as opposed to a generalized anxiety disorder. So Mr. J says on line 22, okay, so on this topic, if something new comes up, then we can address it. But if you have other topics to just pose her on, then I suggest we go on. And then page 42, line 1, that's when I say, I agree, and Dr. Werner, just let the state attorney know. I know that you may be, we are on short time. If you do review your notes over the weekend or whatnot and formulate any other opinions, just let the state attorney know and I will address it.
We'll address it.
And we'll address it. Line 7, the witness, Dr. Werner says absolutely. And then, do you want me to continue reading or?
If there's portions you want to highlight for me, I mean, I have the transcript. I'm following along with you.
That was the general understanding that we had about all diagnoses.
So, but she's not saying she diagnosed her with it. She's saying she did not diagnose that. Based on her interview, she did not diagnose PTSD, and she's explaining why. But it sounds like Owens didn't even ask, like, a previous expert has diagnosed her with PTSD. What are your thoughts on Sarah Boone meeting criteria for PTSD? That could have been a question. It just could have been a question.
These all opinions that she may have. And so she starts talking about the mental status exam that she gave her, and then she page 43, line A, she said she has narcissistic personality disorder traits.
She does.
Or I asked that question, That's how she answered.
Let me know if my sound is
A little
okay.
bit of that.
Because Owens is low. Let me know if I'm too loud right now.
And then she criteria that she met. And then on page 45, I asked her what other criteria, on line 1, would tend to indicate that she was a narcissist. And the answer, Dr. Werner, I didn't say that she was. I said that she has narcissistic traits.
She does.
And that was the examples. That was.
Excuse me for interrupting, but can we lasso this back in?
I understand that's what the depo reflects, but the non-objection which led to objection pertains to an opinion specifically about post-traumatic stress disorder. And at this time, no opinion is being referenced, nor does the call of the question pertain to narcissistic personality traits or a diagnosis of narcissism. The question pertains to PTSD.
Exactly.
All right, page 46. Line 1, question, okay. Do you feel like she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder?
Okay.
Line 3, answer. She didn't give any criteria with regards to that.
That's what she just.
Fear and anxiety of his
I want to throw something. That's what she just said. Owens, that's what she just said on the stand. How is that different? What? Owens, that's exactly what she just said.
family and fear that they would come into the jail or have someone else come to the jail in Harper. She talked about that. And she spoke about, having recollections, remembering abuse from George during the evaluation. Question 13, line 13, on 46.
That's what she just said, I thought.
But you don't believe that she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, in your opinion? Answer, line 15. No. I would have to look back through my notes to see if she fully met the criteria.
So, but she said no.
Question, line 17. Can you explain why you don't think she suffers from post-traumatic?
Is he helping refresh her of her testimony that she is now about to give again? Like this isn't different. Why are we doing this? Why? I'm glad because it gives us time to catch up, but
Stress disorder. Answer, line 19. No, I didn't say one way or the other. I would have to look back through my notes for that. Line 21, question. Is that something that you may, in the future, give an opinion about after some time reflecting and reviewing your notes?
her opinion didn't
Line
change
24,
though.
answer, I may. Number 25, question. Okay, And that's something you will let the lawyers know about if that changes.
It didn't
Answer
change.
line 2 of page 47, yes. That's specific to the post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
So at the time of this deposition, when I asked her specifically,
So what's the legal objection?
I don't like her
What are the
testimony.
legal grounds of the objection?
I
would
don't
not
like
take
what
that
she said.
deposition, Judge. When she said, I have not had time sufficiently to answer these questions, these diagnoses, these opinions, if this wasn't set for a definitive date that you had already told me it's not going to be continued, I would refuse to take that deposition. But under the promises from the state,
What
I
are the
will be notified of any changes.
legal grounds of your objection? I'm from
If you have a Boongo card, Owens complains about time. Owens just complained about time. So if you that's definitely one of these. It's on the one that it was a good day. If you have your Boongo card, Mr. Owens complains about time.
familiar with the background. I'm familiar with the time frame. I'm familiar with all the dates and the depots and the coordination and everything we had to do to get this all teed up before trial. What are the legal grounds of your objection?
Judge K has also had to state the obvious.
I understand the backdrop.
I mean, I don't know if there's a legal ground other than we had an agreement as attorneys, as parties, that I would be notified of change of opinion. and I
It
would be
didn't
allowed to take
change.
a second deposition. That's the only thing I know to object to.
Her opinion
Because I was
didn't
not given that
change.
opportunity, which was an agreement between the parties.
Response.
Judge, I don't appreciate the implications that they're making. What I would proffer with this witness is, we spoke yesterday. I asked her if she had any change in her opinion about any of the
No.
diagnoses. She said no. And I asked, well, then my position, my understanding of her position is that it doesn't matter whether she had PTSD or not, because what Ms. Boone said at the time was that she zipped Mr. Torres up into the suitcase. They were both laughing. And once he was already secured in the suitcase, she became angry and then did all the things that she did. My expected answers from the doctor, based on a very brief conversation yesterday and this morning, was that if I asked her whether or not PTSD or BSS had anything to do with this particular
The answer would be no.
case, that her answer would be, it doesn't matter because of what she stated happened. I'm not asking her about her diagnosis of PTSD. I'm not going to be going into narcissism. I'm not going to go into whether or not she ever delineated the difference between adjustment disorder or anxiety, because my understanding of what she told me was that none of this matters. None of this matters because of what she said to us during the evaluation.
But the question was, and I may have to ask Madam Court Reporter to read it back, but
It
my
was.
memory of what the question was is, have you formulated an opinion with regard to PTSD?
That was the
And my
question.
expected answer was, it doesn't matter because of what she said during the evaluation.
Okay. Unfortunately, that was not the answer that came from the witness.
It wasn't.
The answer was
Yeah,
a
but that's
definitive
not
no.
the attorney's fault.
I'm not casting blame. I'm just going back over what was asked and what was said.
Yes.
Judge, and that's his position, that post-traumatic stress disorder, that doesn't apply in this case, and that he, I'm sure, reflected his opinion to the expert. But that doesn't mean that that's my opinion, that post-traumatic stress does not apply.
That's
It's-
irrelevant
it's-
for the purposes of this argument.
It's not your turn.
Him feeling like it didn't apply.
Okay, as an officer of the court, he just told me he spoke to the expert yesterday and the opinions hadn't changed.
Mr. Owens, it's
And
not
the
your
opinion
turn.
that was offered at the deposition was, I'm not sure. And based on what he had proffered as to what he expected the answer to be, the answer was not, it was not going to be any different. It's not applicable. It doesn't matter because of what she told me. That's unfortunately not the answer that was given. So what is it that you're asking me to do at this time, Mr. Owens?
I'm asking, I don't know if we need to proffer the entire testimony of this witness. because
Please don't.
Opinions and diagnoses have apparently changed.
Please
I
don't.
think I have a right to take a second deposition before she testifies.
What other opinions, Mr. J, if any, are going to be offered by Dr. Werner?
May I just proffer?
Yes.
All right, you've been present for all this hearing, yes, doctor?
Yes.
Am I misrepresenting any of our conversations?
No.
All right. And so if I asked you if battered spouse syndrome or PTSD has any relationship to the facts of the case as the defendant relayed them to you, what would be your answer?
That it's not related to the incident as she reported it.
Okay. And if I ask you, therefore, if there were any prior instances of violence, would that change your opinion? What would your answer be?
No.
And if you reviewed any other materials, would that change your opinion based on what she told you about what happened that evening?
No.
That's it.
Judge, number one, she's given a legal opinion. Number two, it's a discovery violation.
How? How?
What is the legal opinion?
That post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't apply in this case.
Dr. Harper testified it did, and that's what experts do.
I would like to have known that, and that was going to be her opinion before today.
It's in her deposition.
That's not a change in testimony. That's
Where is that a change in the deposition?
It's not.
I asked,
No. This is a 87-page transcript.
Owens just asked the judge to read the 87-page transcript. Are we trying to waste the court's time? Judge K's patience is all gone. No, sir. No.
You're objecting. You have the burden to establish your objection.
give me a minute. I'll read through it and find where I asked her.
I mean, this isn't the first time I've looked at this deposition. The state provided it to me when we had the hearing on whether or not battered spouse would be permitted. And the state provided specific highlights for me to look at. At no point in time did the defense say, look at this, look at this, look at this in her deposition when we had that hearing. So other than what's being provided to me right now and what's been testified to this morning, I don't know what opinions she has. All I know in coming into today is what the basis of her opinion was, specifically with regard to any of the statements that Ms. Boone had provided, which was the whole crux of the state's motion to prevent battered spouse from coming into evidence.
Judge, if you look at page 66, line 20.
Wow.
Let me know when you're there, Judge.
Hang on.
But I'm surprised Owens didn't ask for a mistrial, because I think Owens could have said, this jury has been tainted. So that's why the judge said, what do you want for me to do? Because the jury has heard something that, because the way the state said they were the question they asked wasn't exactly what was actually asked. And so I'm not a lawyer, y'all. I'm a psychologist, but I think that's why Judge K said, what do you want for me to do? And Owens could say, please advise the jury to strike. But like once something's been said, the jury can't unhear it. They can't. Like they can, but you can't unhear it. So that's why things slip out. I don't know that any lawyer would ever admit that it was intentional, because I think there could be like I think there could be consequences if it was, but if it was ever malicious. But I think sometimes things get out on purpose because they're trying. And I know sometimes witnesses say things that they know they're not supposed to say, because even when it's objected to, they still can't, like the jury can't unhear what they just heard. Robert Tellis did that a lot. And then he would try to act all innocent, like, oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. I'm so sorry.
Yes, sir.
Page 66, line 20, question. Okay, so other than the couple of hours that you intend to maybe reflect on your notes and anything else, any other work that you intend to do on
And
this case?
Owens doesn't want to have
Answer
to do this
23,
again.
no, sir.
He doesn't want to
Not
do
that I'm
this
aware
again.
of. Line 24, question. And you've expressed all your opinions, at least generally here today. Answer, page 67, line 1. Yes, sir. Question. Then I go into these. Opinions other than the ones you've expressed here today. Line 10, answer. That I've been asked about. If I'm asked something else, that I'll offer it. Number 12. Question. And you've been provided all the resources you need to rely on and express your opinions. Line 14, answer. I have based an opinion on the resources that I've been provided. If there's other things out there to be provided that may or may not change my opinion.
I'm kind of surprised the state. So the witnesses were sequestered, but sometimes for expert witnesses, sometimes the expert is able to hear the prior expert's testimony. So sometimes you allow the state's psychologist to hear the other person's testimony. It doesn't always happen, but I've seen that happen in some cases. That did not happen in this case. I think the witnesses were all sequestered. They weren't supposed to know about any other testimony. Sometimes if you have a report from another doctor, sometimes you provide that to your expert so they can review the other expert's conclusion, and they can discuss how they might differ or agree with that conclusion as well.
I believe it's a discovery violation because I should have been notified if there was going to be a change in
Discovery violation.
opinions here today. And we had an agreement that I was going to be allowed to retake the deposition and not be ambushed in the middle of the trial
Ambush.
with a new opinion.
What new opinions are different based on what Mr. J proffered the testimony is going to be?
I have to ask Madam Clerk to reread the question and the answer from the expert. It's been so long now.
Madam Clerk, or Madam Court Reporter, are you able to reread the portion of the proffer as to what Mr. J asked of the witness?
I thought he was asking the first
Absolutely.
question.
Of course. Is able to provide that reading.
So the Madam Court Reporter needed a little bit of time to be able to provide that. We are going to zoom ahead.
Doctor, answer, yes. Question, am I misrepresenting any of our conversations? Answer, no. Question, all right, so if I ask you if battered spouse syndrome or PTSD has any relationship to the facts of this case and the defendant relayed them to you, what would be your answer? Question, that it's not related to the incident that she reported it. Question, okay. And if I ask you, therefore, if there are any prior instances of violence, would that change your opinion? What would your answer be? Answer, no. Question, if you reviewed any other materials, would that change your opinion based on what she told you about what happened that evening? Answer, no. Question, all right, that's it.
I don't think that's the very beginning before I objected.
What was asked?
So that's where they didn't clarify. Owens was asking for what the jury heard. That's what Owens was asking for, but it wasn't clear. I heard it. He wasn't asking for the proffer to be reread. He was asking for the part before the jury went out.
Was to read back the proffer.
I thought I was asking to go back to the very beginning when the question was asked and then her response and my objection to it.
What was specifically asked was to the proffer, because the question before the court was whether the proffered opinions are at odds with what was testified to during the course of the deposition. There's the question that was asked and the answer that was given affirmatively provided an opinion as to PTSD. I think Mr. J admits that. Mr. J has advised the court that's not what he was hoping the answer would be. The answer was supposed to be something different as identified in the proffer, which is why I had Madam Court Reporter read back the proffer. So the question Mr. Owens posed to you is whether the proffered opinions that Madam Court Reporter just read back to us are different than what was provided in the deposition.
Yes.
How so?
She tended to explain in
Owens.
the
Oh.
proffer some legal reason why it did not apply. In her opinion, that was not discussed in any way in the deposition.
Okay. My question is specific as to opinions. Her opinions were as to battered spouse syndrome or post-traumatic stress disorder and their relationship to the case based on the defendant's responses. The answer is not related to the incident as the defendant reported. Those are the opinions, as I understand them based on the proffer, as it relates to battered spouse syndrome and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Thanks. Thanks, Kelly D. I like sweaters, but it's going to be like 77 today. It was 50 and something this morning. And then I might end up getting a little warm today, but we'll see. Okay, I can.
Page 46, line 13 was the question, but you don't believe that she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder in your opinion. Line 15, the answer is no. I would have to look back through my notes to see if she fully met that criteria.
And that answer was the same today, in my opinion. Not a lawyer. In my opinion, that was the same testimony today.
Question 17, can you explain why you don't think she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder? Line 19, the answer no. I didn't say one way or the other. I would have to look back through my notes for that. Question number 21, is that something that you may, in the future, give an opinion about after some time reflecting and reviewing your notes? 24, I may. 25, okay, and that's something you will let the lawyers know about if that changes. That's on page 47. Yes. That's fundamentally, substantially, materially different from what she's testified as it relates to post-traumatic stress as it applies in this case?
In the proffer?
Excuse me?
In the proffer?
No.
She's not rendering it, unless I misunderstood the proffer, she's not rendering an opinion on PTSD and whether or not Ms. Boone suffers from it.
Well, she led me to believe that she was trying to decide whether or not Sarah
That's-
Boone suffered from
those
post-traumatic
aren't what
stress.
those
Now,
words
the
mean.
proffer, they're
Owens, she led me to believe. Owens, that's not what her words said. Her words said no. She didn't think she met criteria for PTSD. And if she found out something later, she might change her opinion, but her opinion has not changed. She said exactly what she said in her deposition, in my personal opinion, not a lawyer.
they're claiming that post-traumatic stress does not apply. I don't know what the initial question was. We haven't had that read back when it was first going on, when the question was asked, and I believe she rendered an opinion. And I, again, like that, we read that. What the initial
I need
question
my
was, what the
popcorn.
response was, because it did, I know I objected, I can't even remember it now, but I know I objected because I knew it was inconsistent with.
You asked to approach, and then you explained that the question was not something that was framed in the deposition. Multiple times I
That's what
asked you
we
for a
do
legal
here.
objection. And it wasn't until right before or right after we sent the jury out that you provided some legal objection.
I said,
Now, Madam, if you want Madam Court Reporter to go back and read the question that led us to where we are right now and the answer, I'm totally on board with that. I have a memory of what it was, but nothing like,
Before she does that, can I get the first question of the proffer? If BSS or PTSD has any, can you reread that? So I can-
let's just reread the entire proffer, just so that it's a clear, super.
I'm gonna fast forward past that. We don't need to hear that again. And Sarah's over there smiling.
And the,
Your opinion.
right,
Talk
go
about
ahead.
The very last question.
My understanding is it was the question and the answer right before Mr. Owens asked to approach.
Question, what was your opinion? Answer, my opinion was that she did not give me enough information to diagnose her with post-traumatic stress disorder at the time that I evaluated her at the jail.
I don't think that differs from her deposition. She did not give me enough information to diagnose PTSD. Like that's not even challenging the other expert who diagnosed her with PTSD. She's just saying I didn't get enough from my evaluation to diagnose her with PTSD.
Can you read that for me one more time, please?
The answer.
Both the question and the answer.
Question, what was your opinion? Answer,
And the question was just, what was your opinion? And so the expert is the one that gave the response that was different. So to me, this is a little on the expert. And that's where I think she didn't give the answer that the state wanted her to give. And that's not on the state, in my opinion. But okay.
my opinion was that she did not give me enough information to diagnose her with post-traumatic stress disorder at the time that I evaluated her at the jail.
Maybe we got the previous question.
Question, and in this particular case, did you require any additional information to reach your conclusion about the relationship between battered spouse syndrome and the events of this evening? Answer, I based my opinion on the information that I had. Certainly, if there was more information, my opinion would be subject to change.
Because she actually said if there was more information, her opinion would be subject to change. She did say that. So the defense could actually ask her, what if George Torres, blah, blah, blah. Like, so she does not know what Sarah's testimony has been. And so if the defense provides her with that, I don't think her opinion's going to change, but the defense can go there and then it can be up to the jury.
Question, what was your opinion?
Mr. Owens?
Number one, that question and answer, she gave a different opinion than what she gave in her deposition, which, subject to the agreement we had,
It's-
I should have noticed. Number two, with the proffer, it seems that she's going to find that post-traumatic stress disorder did not apply to the facts as related by Sarah Boone.
Yes.
And that is an opinion that I needed to know about. And I asked throughout this deposition and at the very end, some general, if you have any new opinions or anything new that differs from what you said here today, please notify the lawyers or words to that effect. So it's an evidentiary issue. I've got a right to be prepared for the trial through discovery to know what the witnesses are going to opine. And this is a discovery violation.
He has some nerve. He brought in he brought in people at the last minute. The state is running around having to do depositions in the middle of I don't okay. Uh okay. We're just gonna keep it going.
Based on two things. One, her initial answer to the question that I objected to, and then two, the proffer is a new opinion. It's a discovery violation. I asked that the witness be stricken.
Any response?
Judge, I think it's clear from my original question that the intent that I stated was the intent of my question to get the answer that I intended to get was what the question was intended to elicit from the witness. As far as the discovery violations and continued attacks, I'm just not I'm not convinced he understands what the answer means or what it's going to be. The answer isn't going to be Ms. Boone didn't have PTSD, hence, therefore, battered spouse syndrome doesn't apply in this case.
Mhm.
What I believe she's going to say, and what I believe I've been saying
think I
she's
heard
going to
him.
say,
Mhm.
based on our conversations, was irrespective of whether anybody believes Ms. Boone had BSS or PTSD, it is irrelevant because of what Ms. Boone told her happened at the time of the event. That is not a discovery violation. She was specific in saying, if you have any questions you want to ask me, I'll give you an opinion. That is exactly what she said on page 67 of the deposition in response to a question that starts at line 7. Question, just double dog sure, you admit that you have no other opinions other than the ones you've expressed here today. Answer, that I've been asked about. If I'm asked about something else, then I'll offer it. They didn't ask about the interplay of the facts with the relevance of the syndrome. That's them, not the state.
Any other argument?
The totality, if you read that deposition and all that we talked
I
about-
specifically asked you, Mr. Owens, to point out for me
What?
I specifically asked for you to point out specific portions of the deposition that are at odds with.
It is not on the judge to do your job, Mr. Owens. Now, Mr. Owens is doing a good job representing Sarah and it feels painful to me, but the judge is correct in being like, you need to show me what I need to look at. You can't expect me to read 87 pages and then just so happen to find the gem that you won't take 5 minutes to look for, in my personal opinion.
With either A, the opinion that was previously given, or B, what was proffered to. You have provided me pages 45, 46 of the deposition relating to specific opinions on whether or not Ms. Boone suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. Are there any other portions of the depo that you would like to point out for me? I am not going to read an 87-page deposition and continue to waste our jurors' time as we try to find a solution for the situation that is now before us.
Yes.
If there are specific portions of this deposition that are at odds with the opinions that have been proffered and or provided so far, I would ask you to direct my attention to them,
Well, the ones that I expressed,
other than what you've already identified.
the ones that I expressed, and that just the understanding that we had that she in the pages that I have talked about previously here today, in the pages that I referred to about our agreement that she was going to let me know if there were any opinions that she had, in addition to the opinions that she gave in the transcript.
All right, thank you.
So if you do have, this isn't fair, I feel like this is someone says this is not fair. If you have that on your Boone Go card, you can go ahead and mark that one off.
All right. Any other argument, Mr. J?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, the court has had the opportunity to listen to the proffer as read back by Madam Court Reporter, the readback of the opinion that was previously offered. The portions of the deposition which have been highlighted by the defense specifically pertain to opinions by the defendant as to whether or not the defendant suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. That opinion is not being offered. The opinion pertains to the relationship of battered spouse syndrome and or PTSD as it relates to the facts of the case as the defendant has relayed them to you, and that they are not related. However, the deposition is identified by the defense identifies that if there were any additional opinions, that there would be notification. So the court at this point in time, as there has been an alleged discovery violation in accordance with binding precedent by the 6th District Court of Appeal, which is binding on this trial court in Young v. State, 369, Southern 3rd, 1243. At pinpoint 1248, the court is now going to conduct a discovery violation or discovery Richardson hearing. State any other arguments with regard to the elements of a Richardson hearing.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other arguments with regard to the elements of a Richardson hearing, Mr. Owens?
No, other than I understood she did give an opinion about post-traumatic stress in that initial series of questions.
Okay. All right, the court, again, reviewing the proffer and the opinion, finds.
So Judge K, before we get to his finding, he is upholding a phenomenal record. I know a lot of people were upset that he did find the scintilla of evidence that Sarah Boone did meet, should be able to present this defense. If he had denied that, if she had been unable to present that, this whole trial would have to start over. She would be granted a whole new trial, and nobody wants that. And so I do agree that she said enough for a um, she did say enough in my non-lawyer opinion.
That the state's violation was inadvertent
Yes.
based on the proffer by the state, which was agreed to by Dr. Werner as to the conversation they had last night, as to the opinions and whether or not that they had changed. However, I do find that that violation is substantial with regard to the opinions based on the testimony in Dr. Werner's deposition, that any other additional opinions would be notified to the defense. As it relates to the third category, the effect on the defendant to properly prepare for trial. Although the questions in the deposition as highlighted by the defense so far are do not address the opinions being currently offered, I do find that it has some impact on the ability for the defendant to properly prepare for trial. As it relates to the opinion that was previously provided as read back, specifically my opinion was that she did not give enough information to diagnose her with PTSD at the time of the evaluation at the jail. What is your position, if any, with regard to that opinion now that the jury has heard it? Mr. Robbins.
Oh.
Because my question is, do you want it struck?
I think the judge gave him the answer. The judge is giving him a multiple choice question that only has answer A. Like, my question is, like, would you like the question? He's, oh my gosh.
On that issue, we'll address it on cross-examination.
So you do not want it to be struck, and you do not want a curative instruction.
Well, I'm going to question her about post-traumatic stress, so it's going to come out through my cross from the deposition about what she said, and it's inconsistent with what she said here today, so I'm going to want to rely on that question or that answer.
Okay, all right. Ms. Boone, have you been paying attention to?
Ooh, so to me, I wonder. I'm gonna need to hear the lawyer. Emily D. Baker. I'm gonna have to go back and watch somebody else's stream, a lawyer stream. I don't think that was a good idea. I don't know that that was a good idea. I know my camera totally it followed me down and then it didn't come back up. Thankfully, I don't like. It's just I just have a pillow in my lap and oh, let's keep it going.
To the questions and answers and the readbacks of both the proffered testimony and the opinion testimony?
Yes.
And are you on board with the strategy not to seek to strike that opinion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
With regard to the proffered testimony, I'm going to permit now in open court, and I will oversee the deposition for you, Mr. Owens, to inquire as to those opinions.
I'm sorry.
With regard to the proffered opinions, the court will oversee a deposition now, and you may proceed.
Right now?
Yes. With regard to the proffered opinions. And I believe that will provide a cure for the discovery violation under the Richardson violation based on your
So the funny part for me is I think Owens like wanted a break or like wanted, I don't know. And can you imagine being the jury? So the jury's been out for probably an hour. I don't know. It's been a long time. The jury has no clue what's going on. And the judge is like, all right, Owens, you want a deposition? Let's go. Like it's almost like the judge is calling his bluff. This judge has phenomenal boundaries. Like this judge, like chef's kiss. I adore. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and press play.
request not to strike the prior opinion. And since you're going to utilize that on cross, I find that the prejudice is limited. But with regard to the new opinions, I will give you the opportunity to depose her now, curing the prejudice at that point in time. You may proceed.
Dr. Warren.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
At some point, the state attorney notified you that you were to come today.
Correct.
Did you and the state attorney have a discussion about your testimony?
Yes.
When was that discussion?
Briefly last night.
So y'all talked on the phone last night?
Yes.
Have y'all had any discussions since the phone conversation last night?
Briefly this morning.
And how long was the phone conversation?
Less than 5 minutes.
How long was the face-to-face conversation?
Less than 5 minutes.
Did y'all discuss that your testimony would be that you did not have enough information that you gathered from Sarah Boone to form an opinion as to whether or not she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder.
Correct, that my opinion hadn't changed.
I'm sorry?
Yes, that my opinion hadn't changed, that I didn't have enough information.
Okay. And did the state attorney speak to you about that it didn't matter whether you had an opinion if you didn't feel like the facts that Sarah Boone had given you as it relates to the facts and issue in this case, that you didn't, if you didn't feel like post-traumatic stress even applied, then you could answer that way?
Correct, that was my opinion, correct.
But did he present that to you initially for you to form an opinion about it?
No, my opinion was that it didn't apply because of the way that she described the incident to me.
Was that your opinion back when I took your deposition?
Yes,
When did you form that opinion?
when she described the incident to me.
Why didn't you let us know that was your opinion at the time that I took your deposition?
You didn't ask me about that, sir.
Do you remember me asking you any other opinions that you may have as it relates to this case?
You didn't ask me specifically about that.
I understand that, but you're saying you formed that opinion prior to the deposition, correct?
Yes, the state attorney and I discussed that on the way out of the jail, as a matter of fact.
After the deposition.
No, sir, after the evaluation.
Okay.
On the way out of the jail.
All right. And I asked you, were there any other opinions that you may express at trial after you had discussed that with a state attorney prior to the deposition? Is that correct?
Yes,
And so you were aware that I didn't want to be ambushed at trial. I wanted to know any and all opinions that you may be expressing in the Sarah Boone case.
I didn't know what specific information you wanted, sir. That's why you had a deposition. I answered your questions. I don't know what all information you want me to provide to you.
So because I didn't ask you specifics, you felt like you didn't have to respond specifically.
No, sir, I answered all of your questions. And as I said, I'm happy to answer any questions that I'm asked. I don't know what questions you want me to answer.
But you know that this was a central issue in the case. Did you not? Your opinion
Yes,
is relating to a central issue in this case.
correct.
You're aware Sarah Boone's on trial for murder.
That's
And you had this opinion when I was taking your deposition, and I was asking you specifics about any opinions that you may be.
Hold on. So why is he going? I thought this was his chance to get a better understanding of her opinion. Why is he doing this? Why it, like, he shouldn't be taking out this anger on the expert? Like, this is weird. Okay.
Expressing in the trial of Sarah Boone, and you did not disclose
And also, okay, we'll slow it down to normal.
it.
Well, I told you that I would answer any questions that were asked of me. I have a number of opinions. I know that I don't feel that she's suffering from major depressive disorder. I didn't offer that opinion either. I have a number of opinions.
That's all the questions I have.
Mr. J, anything else?
I'm just making sure you want to inquire,
This is your opportunity, Mr. Owens.
because that was more just about,
Inquire about what?
This is your opportunity to inquire. You are conducting a deposition. This is your opportunity and your only opportunity to cure any prejudice that we've identified with regard to those proffered opinions as it relates to the relationship of battered spouse syndrome and or post-traumatic stress disorder.
I think Mr. Owens didn't understand what this deposition was supposed to be. Like, this wasn't a deposition about, like, this wasn't a Richardson hearing. This was your deposition to get the information related to what you now understand to be the state's opinion. You just heard her opinion. This is now your chance to get that. Like, that's what this is supposed to be right now. And so, okay. I don't want to talk. Okay. To me, in my opinion, sometimes Owens can get upset. And I think that emotion, okay. In general, emotions can impact decision-making, judgment, and our words. And he should have taken a pregnant pause. He should have asked the judge, can I get 10 minutes to prepare for this deposition. The judge probably would have given him 10 minutes. Like, I need to prepare my questions. I need to consult with the rest of my team. He could have asked for that, and I don't think he did. I don't know if he's about to ask for that now, but to me, he's too escalated to do a good job with this unless he's able to ring it in a little, because he sounds emotional to me. And emotions aren't bad, but like, it can't be, this is unfair, I don't like this. It's like, but like, what's the law? Like, this is a court. You have to bring it back to that part.
Disorder as proffered.
The problem is now, Judge, is I've got my expert, and we weren't aware. You know how in these type cases, the experts are allowed to listen to the testimony of the other experts and read the depositions of the other experts. Dr. Werner, were you given the opportunity to read Dr. Harper's deposition?
I was.
I mean, that's standard operating procedure in these type cases. And now I'm taking a deposition on the fly, and then I haven't had a chance to speak with my expert about those opinions and whether or not that would change her opinion. It just puts me in a very difficult situation, but if I'm ordered to continue the deposition, I will.
That's your decision. It's not an order. I'm just saying that this is the opportunity to cure that Richardson issue. You asked previously to strike the expert. I am disinclined to do that. The case law says that is an extraordinary remedy, one which I am not going to permit.
Dr. Werner, you realize you're in a courtroom.
Yes, sir.
And we're waiting on the jury on the trial of Sarah Boone.
Yes.
Are there any other opinions that you intend to express in this trial that you have not disclosed to me in the deposition, or you have not disclosed here today under oath?
I'm happy to answer any questions that I'm asked.
Are you refusing to answer my question about any other opinions that you intend to express here today as it relates to Sarah Boone, who is on trial for murder in the second degree?
Judge, I'm going to object. The catch-all vague question that Mr. Owens wants to ask this expert witness about any and all opinions she may or may not have, 99 out of 100 attorneys would come in here and say that's not how you do depositions with expert witnesses. You have to ask specific questions. Anytime you ask a question like that of an expert, the expert's always going to say, please ask me a specific question. And that's what she did then. That's what she's doing now. It's unfair and vague to ask somebody, tell me every opinion you have.
Judge,
Yes, sir.
we're in the middle of a trial. She's fixing to testify. She's had conversations with the state attorney. She knows what she's going to be asked in terms of opinions that she's going to express. That's why she's here, to help the jury understand the science that relates to the law and express opinions. I mean, for me to ask, we're playing hide the ball here? In the middle of a trial.
I disagree that there's any hiding of the ball. There's been a proffer that's been read multiple times as to the scope of the opinions regarding to battered spouse syndrome and post-traumatic stress disorder and its relationship to the facts of the case as the defendant represented them. And the answer is they are not relatable to the incident as relayed by the defendant. That is the opinion that have been proffered.
All right, can I continue with my deposition?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Werner, do you recall expressing that you wanted more time to reflect as to whether or not Sarah Boone suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yes, that I was going to review my notes to see if I had enough information in there to support or negate that.
All right. What additional information would you need for you to express an opinion that she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder?
So she did not give me information regarding the presence of intrusive symptoms. She didn't give me information regarding persistent avoidance. She didn't give me information regarding alterations in arousal or reactivity.
Anything else?
No.
Would you agree you failed to ask her those questions?
I asked her if there was any other important information that she felt like she needed to share with me at the end of my evaluation, and she said no.
So a catch-all question.
Correct.
Were there any other personality disorders? Isn't that what you do as a psychiatrist? You diagnose?
Shanny. Ooh, let me tell you, right now, we are outside of the presence of the jury. Owens is conducting a deposition on the state's expert because an opinion was offered that he was not aware of. So the judge, to cure this issue, the judge is having Owens give that deposition now. And, oh, good gosh.
An opinion, express opinions about whether people suffer from personality disorders?
Correct.
Are there any other personality disorders that you have formed opinions about Sarah Boone that you intend to express?
No.
So, narcissism, you did not find.
I found narcissistic traits.
In terms of your opinion that she suffers from narcissistic personality disorder.
No, sir, I said narcissistic traits.
Okay. So you don't have an opinion that she suffers from narcissistic personality disorder.
Correct. She displays narcissistic traits.
You express an opinion that she suffers from alcohol use syndrome,
Alcohol use disorder.
alcohol use disorder.
Correct.
Is that still your opinion?
Yes, it is.
Anxiety disorder. Is it your opinion she suffers from the anxiety disorder?
No.
Do you recall in your deposition indicating that you felt like she suffered from either anxiety disorder or adjustment disorder?
That's correct.
And you've changed that opinion now?
I'm leaning towards the adjustment disorder secondary to her legal situation.
So you haven't formed an opinion as to whether or not she suffers from general anxiety disorder or adjustment disorder?
Correct.
You agree that she suffered from trauma as it relates to the domestic violence history that she expressed to you from the intimate partner violence with Jorge Torres?
Yes, as reported by her. Yes.
Do you have anything to dispute that?
No.
Suffer from any form of psychosis?
No.
Order?
No.
Opinion that Sarah Boone suffers from acute stress disorder?
No. Yes, I think that,
Sarah Boone suffers from intimate partner violence?
yes, I think that there is enough history the volatile relationship between the two of them.
Because of that, do you believe that Sarah Boone suffers from battered spouse syndrome?
She may meet the criteria for that.
May. So it's possible? Is that your opinion?
Yes.
Definitively, you can't say?
There's a history of her having that. Yes.
So you agree she suffers from battered spouse syndrome?
Yeah.
That's a pretty big win for the defense. Because normally, so battered spouse syndrome would be in the trauma and stressor related disorders. So she is saying that she has a trauma and related disorder. She just doesn't meet criteria for PTSD. That's what she's saying. I think I unmuted myself. I think I'm good. I hope I am.
I believe we've covered anxiety disorder, narcissism, battered spouse syndrome, and alcohol use disorder. Are there any other opinions that you intend to express as it relates to that or any other psychological condition of Sarah Boone?
No.
That's all the questions I have.
Any other arguments at this time?
No, Judge, just the one I've already made.
Okay, all right. The court has conducted its Richardson hearing and made its findings. The court, as previously identified, will not strike the expert, as that remedy is quite draconian, and I will not do so based on the questions that were asked as highlighted by the defense and the opinions that were offered. The specific areas for which opinions are being offered were not inquired into, but the deposition did leave it open. That I'll ask questions about any other opinions that I'm asked about or anything else that I'm asked during the course of the trial, specifically page 59, 22 through 26 on 1, page 60, lines 11 through 25. So in the abundance of caution, the court has permitted that in-court deposition. Anything else, sir?
No, sir.
State, anything else?
That's it.
All right, let's go ahead and bring back in our panel and we can.
Before we bring the jury back in, may I approach Mr. Cacciatore on a completely unrelated matter?
Does it need to be on the record or?
Yes, it does.
Okay, go ahead.
We would concede that Detective Copsell and Detective Lowen are not testifying against us. They've been here in court this morning.
They're still under defense subpoena.
I
We have
asked,
not,
excuse me, I asked Mr. Henderson if you guys were calling Detective Capsule again, and he said no.
and we're not in our defense, our direct defense. Is there a possibility that based upon the information the state is going to present today or this afternoon, that we may want to receive or seek sir rebuttal and possibly through these witnesses? They're under subpoena, and I'm sorry, Mr. Henderson's not here. I've just noticed her presence. Out of an abundance of caution, I think that we need to clarify for the record that they're here listening to.
What's your base? Well, we're off the record. There's no jury here. That's fine. You all stay where you are. What's the basis for your sir rebuttal?
We don't know because I don't know what the state's going to place in rebuttal. But
It doesn't answer my question. What's the legal basis of a sir rebuttal?
Judicial discretion as to the fairness of the proceeding that the defendant pursued.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Cacciatore?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. The rule sequestration is still in full force and effect. Detectives Lowen and Capsule, good morning. I'm going to ask you to be excused from our proceedings and not view them and not have any communication amongst yourselves about testimony that has been previously given or any questions that have been asked or answered, and just keep your separate ways as it relates to this case and any questions or testimony that you intend to give, may give, or have give, and then comply with any instructions that were provided to you by the state.
Wow. So y'all, I have a, okay, I'm just going to make sure there's nothing else.
Anything else, Mr. Owens, we need to address?
No.
Anything else, state?
No, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring back in our jury.
Going to bring back
You
in the
can continue your
jury.
inquiry, sir. Presence, and we're going to continue the state's rebuttal case this morning. Again, if you could, please just raise your hands to confirm that you complied with the court's instructions during the break. Record reflect all hands have been raised. Mr. J, you may continue your inquiry, sir.
State would move to strike the last response as non-responsive.
Approach.
So maybe out of an abundance of caution, maybe the state wants the response stricken? Because the defense wants it in there.
Irrespective of whether anybody has an opinion about whether Ms. Boone was suffering from PTSD or BSS, irrespective of that, based on your evaluation of Ms. Boone and what she relayed to you about the facts of the case, does PTSD or BSS have any relation?
Objection, that's an asset answer.
Overruled.
No.
No.
And what particular part of her statements about
They objected. It had not been asked in front of the jury. It had not been asked in front of the jury. I'm going to go back because that question had not been asked in front of the jury. Mr. Owens, sit down.
PTSD or BSS have any relation?
Objection, that's an asset answer.
Overruled.
No.
And what particular part of her statements about the incident is that?
The whole part where she's describing the part about playing hide and seek and that they were having a good time, they were laughing. When he got in the suitcase, when she found him, they were enjoying themselves. She zipped him up. They were still laughing, having a good time. All of that isn't consistent with her having a feeling of she had imminent risk or imminent, there was an imminent risk of harm that she needed to protect herself.
Can we put your name?
Yes.
Owens, you didn't ask that question. You gave a deposition. You should have asked that question. He should have asked. This is bananas.
Same instruction. Members of the jury, I have something I've to gain among yourselves or anyone else with regard.
The jury's kicked out again?
Y'all can be seated. Thank you. Madam Court Reporter, when you're ready.
How is this our life right now? I don't understand.
Read it from the question, answer, question, objection. Let's just have we can buttress it. Go ahead.
I feel like Owens is trying to break up this expert's testimony. I need a lawyer to talk about this. I feel like Owens is trying to. So for his expert, they all just sat there and she did a phenomenal job. And now they keep having these things pop up with testimony I think Owens doesn't like. Oh my gosh.
Has any opinion about whether Ms. Boone is suffering from PTSD or DSM, irrespective of that, based on their evaluation of Ms. Boone. What she relayed to you about the facts of this case, does PTSD or BSS have any relation? Mr. Owens' objection asked an answer.
Because so what happened? So Sarah Boone never told this doctor about those threats, about what she alleges happened during those 9 minutes. She never said that to this expert. This expert does not know that. To me, the defense should save that for rebuttal.
The court and the whole having a good day last.
Any other argument, Mr. Owens?
That invades the province of the jury. That's a decision whether or not she had imminent risk of harm.
No, this is her opinion. Owens, experts are allowed to give their opinion. I'm sorry if this is loud. Let me know if I need to turn down my mic. This is frustrating.
Or perceived an imminent threat is a question for the jury. This expert can express opinions on science, on medicine, but not on the ultimate issue of fact, and explain to the jury that.
No, she is a BS. Like she's an expert in forensic psychiatry. And within forensic psychiatry, you're able to give opinions about the details of the case. You just are.
This defense doesn't qualify. That you should rely on me as an expert, and I'm going to make the decision for you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, by telling you that under the facts expressed to me by Sarah Boone, she was not perceiving an imminent threat at the time.
She didn't give her one.
Response.
It's not an objectionable opinion. It's not an opinion on the ultimate issue. It's an opinion upon the applicability of a particular set of evidence.
I just need to get to the answer.
Saying and trying to get the witness to say BSS it's not to be regarded. Post-traumatic stress is not to be regarded. It doesn't even come into play. Post-traumatic stress disorder, Batten-Strauss syndrome.
Based on what she described, if I was on that stand, I would say, based on the day she described, I would not say that she was afraid for her life. She doesn't even describe being afraid for her life. She literally went to bed. She went to bed. Like, okay, can we just get to Judge K's ruling? Okay, let's just get to Judge K.
and second 660 at pinpoint 661. In that case, a psychologist testifies, in the instant case in Dinkins, the psychologist's opinions were not legal conclusions. The psychologist did not opine on the defendant's guilt or innocence. Rather, the psychologist opined only as to whether the victim was, quote, mentally defective, end quote, and capable of consent to intercourse. Although the opinions did go to ultimate issues in the case, Florida law, expressly provides that an expert witness may render such opinion. See section 90.703 Florida statutes, which provides that testimony in the form of an opinion or inference otherwise admissible is not objectionable because it includes an ultimate issue to be decided by the trier of fact. Thus, the jury had the power to accept or reject the opinions and was not bound by such. For those reasons, your objection is overruled.
Madam Court, I'm just going to ask you to read the question and answer.
So, Owens, sit down. Sit down. I'm sorry. I'll slow it back down to normal speed. Oh my gosh, is she still up there? Okay, I think court's on break. Okay, let's press play.
Question by Mr. J. All right. Irrespective of whether anybody has any opinion about whether Ms. Boone was suffering from PTSD or DSS, irrespective of that based on your evaluation of Ms. Boone, what she relayed to you about the facts of this case, does PTSD and DSS have any relation? Mr. Owens' objection asked and answered. The court overruled. The witness, no. Question, in what particular part of her statements about the incident is that? Answer, the whole part where she's describing the part of about playing hide and seek, they were having a good time, they were laughing. When he got in the suitcase, when she found him, they were enjoying themselves. She zipped him, they were still laughing, having had a good time. All of that isn't consistent with her having a feeling of she had imminent risk or imminent risk of harm.
No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Yeah.
You may proceed, sir.
Dr. Werner, good morning. What all did you consider collaterally as it relates to your opinions you're expressing here today?
I had a number of documents that I reviewed. I'll look at a list. I had the Orange County Sheriff's Office investigation report. I had a transcript of a 2-hour interview of the defendant. I had a
That's the 2-hour interrogation with Detective Lowen and Detective Copson.
it was an interview, yes.
Excuse me?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
it was labeled an interview. Then I had a transcript of a second interview the next day of Ms. Boone. I had medical records from Aspire Health and Advent Health. And then I had some cell phone records. And I also received the deposition of your expert.
The deposition of Dr. Julie Harper?
Yes.
Okay. And did you listen to Dr. Julie Harper's testimony in this trial of Sarah Boone?
No.
Do you agree you have a right to do that?
Yes.
And did you listen to Sarah Boone's testimony in the trial of this case?
No.
You agree you have a right to do that?
Yes.
And you elected not to listen to her testimony before expressing opinions here today?
Overruled.
I did not have time to do that.
You did not have time to do that?
Correct.
She's on trial for murder.
Yes.
Sustained.
You said you considered some text messages from Sarah Boone's phone.
Correct. I reviewed them. Correct.
Would it be fair to say that of those text messages, they're not necessarily overly relevant?
Objection, any reproach?
Yes.
She can't talk about what's relevant and what's not relevant.
Ability of BSS or PTSD to the facts of this case.
No.
No objection, so.
Did it?
Wait a minute, one
Just
second.
guard-
something happened.
Regarding these text messages that you were provided, did that inform your opinion that you just expressed about the inapplicability of BSS or PTSD to the facts of this case?
No.
No.
Did it apply to your opinion that Sarah Boone suffers from battered spouse syndrome?
No.
Are that information, when you express opinions in court about a patient or about an individual, you rely on your personal assessment as well as the documents and evidence that you're provided and asked to review, are you not?
Correct.
And in this case, your testimony is that you reviewed all that information before you interviewed Sarah Boone for 2.5 hours on October the 2nd of 2024, 22 days ago.
Correct.
So you had the information,
Yes.
the documents, you read the documents,
Yes.
you read all the text messages,
Correct.
and you are going to express some opinions here today. Are
Already
you not?
Correct.
You're going to express some opinions about narcissism, whether or not she had.
No, she didn't.
Yes.
She didn't do that. What's he talking about? She didn't say anything about narcissism. The jury can see that for themselves. Their expert did a good job pointing out that stuff. I think Sarah thinks this is going well. Just over there smiling, laughing. Okay. That's a long pause. Ooh, gosh.
Is it fair?
Rule, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Ma'am, is it fair to say in your evaluation of Sarah Boone on October the 2nd of 2024 that you felt like the text messages that you received from the state attorney
Overruled.
are not relevant to your evaluation of Sarah Boone?
I wasn't sure at the time who actually, I wasn't sure whose phone number it was. In all honesty, we discussed that in the deposition, and I wasn't sure. I have no proof of who actually sent the text, who actually had possession of the phone and put the text, any of the text in.
Well, I was there for the deposition, wasn't
Oh my gosh. Because I think both Sarah and George used the same phone.
I not? Or I appeared by Zoom, did I not?
No, so you were present in person.
Okay, I'm trying to think.
Oh, deposition. You-
The deposition.
By Zoom, yes.
You appear by Zoom, I appear by Zoom, the secretary appeared by Zoom.
Yes,
And we discussed that these were the phone records from Sarah Boone's phone.
yes.
Okay. And at that time, you said they're not necessarily overly relevant to your evaluation.
Isn't that what
Did you
she
not
just
say
said?
that?
I don't recall specifically. I'm happy to look at it.
Can I approach the witness?
You may.
I have it. If you just refer me to the page.
Just a moment.
But I thought that's what she said. Is he arguing with her where we're both saying yes? Like we're saying tomato, tomato? Like I thought that's what they both just said. She
My
said
question is at line,
she said she didn't apply a ton of weight to it because she didn't know who sent it. And why is he arguing with her?
3. The text messages, Judge. Questions about the text messages in your evaluation?
Yes,
And would you agree that they're not necessarily overly relevant to your evaluation of Sarah Boone?
correct.
And you agree that after reviewing all those text messages, that there was nothing that stuck out to you that caused you to pause and feel like they may have some impact on your evaluations of Sarah Boone?
Correct.
Permission to go on here?
Can she answer the question?
Have her answer the question first.
I'm not sure what you're referring to in the deposition.
Page 14, my question is at line 21. Your answer is at line 25.
Is your question that long?
Correct. And I said, no, as I said, it may be aware that they had a volatile relationship.
But my question to you specifically is there anything in the text messages that stuck out to you that caused you to pause and feel like that may have some impact on your evaluations?
Correct.
And you agree your answer is no.
As I said, it made me aware. That's not my complete answer.
Okay, well, let's
I can
talk.
read my
First, you
complete
said no.
As I said, it made me aware that they had a
Ma'am,
volatile
ma'am.
It's not my complete answer.
I know, Dr. Werner, but didn't you say no to me? That was your first sentence was no.
It's not my complete answer.
I understand. I'm going to let you answer that. But when I asked you if there was anything in the text messages that caused you to pause and it would in some way affect the impact on your evaluation.
You want to know the good part about this? He's being overly aggressive with her, and I'm sure the jury, this might look bad to the jury. If I was on the jury, I would be like, why is he fussing with her over this? Like I would be confused. I would be thoroughly confused of like what the heck is going on? Like, okay, she based it on her she has a full-time job. So this expert doesn't have a full-time job of being an expert witness. So like she has an actual, I hate to be like that, but I want to say it this way. Like she sees, I think she does other stuff besides expert testimony. So she might have been busy because he brought up the fact how the other doctor was testifying in another part of the state and how she drove all night, arrived at 12 a.m. And now he's trying to make their expert look bad. Oh,
Your answer to me was no.
It's not my complete answer.
I understand. But was your answer not to me no?
sure.
Yes, but that is not
All
my
right.
complete
Now,
answer.
at the same time, Dr. Werner, at the same time, you expressed that they had a volatile relationship.
Did he need her attention? Did he need her eyes? Did he need her eyes? Did he need her attention? If I was on the jury, I would be like, what the heck? What the heck is going on? Like I don't think he liked the eye contact she was making with the jury right there. Oh my
Relationship.
That is not the totality of my answer either.
Okay, and I'm going to get to it.
Okay.
But part of your answer was that they had a volatile relationship,
Correct?
and this is in relation to my question about the text messages. You agree?
Yes.
After you said no, you said they had a volatile relationship and that she text messaged calling him an idiot, a fucking idiot for overdrafting her account.
Correct.
Why is he bringing that up? Why is Owens bringing up the fact that Sarah called him an effing idiot for okay, I'll lower my volume. Why is Owens bringing that part up? Are you telling him to lower his volume or me to lower mine? Why is he bringing this up?
Right.
And in those text messages, there was some reference to domestic violence between the two.
Correct.
And that demonstrated to you that they had a violent relationship.
Correct.
And do you not agree that that evidence of a volatile relationship had an effect on you expressing your opinion here today that Sarah Boone suffered from battered spouse syndrome?
Judge, may you object?
So did Owens lose time? I don't believe she said that with the jury in the room yet. She hasn't said that yet with the jury in the room. So Owens, that was your deposition. The jury didn't hear that part.
We need to approach.
That's that the jury they might as well just excuse him for lunch.
$7:55. At this point in time, we're going to go ahead and take our lunch break. I'm going to give you a similar instruction that I've given you throughout the last couple of days. Give me a moment to pull it back up. Means involved. Any messages?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Defense? All right, we'll see you at 1:30. Thank you very much. Court's in recess.
I'm confused because like Owens is bringing up stuff that didn't come out on direct. And whoa, I did not expect. So I was prepared for a lot. I was not prepared for how quickly that all went downhill. I don't think that was good for Owens. I'm glad. I'm glad. If I was watching this, like if I was the jury, I would be looking like, what the, like, why is he being so aggressive with her? Why? Why is he being so aggressive? What is going on? So I mentioned, so yeah, sometimes I don't know if y'all know this, but sometimes when I say I'm going to do stuff in a video, I sometimes forget. So let's backtrack, because I said that I was going to cover when Dr. Brannon went on court TV and gave an opinion. And I covered this. I will link the video in the description. This was when the title of this one is Sarah Boone's New Lawyer and Possible Battered Spouse Syndrome. I have an entire Sarah Boone playlist. This is probably one of my, besides the court playlist, this is, and maybe the therapeutic resources playlist. Wow. So it was 53:30. 53:30. All right. So we are going to get to Dr. Brannon.
Your expertise really shine. Looking at this case, and I know you haven't personally evaluated Sarah Boone, but based on what you know and the facts we see them, do you think she could be successful on a battered spouse syndrome defense?
Well, good morning, Julie, and Melba too. Good morning. So it's a very difficult defense, even when everything is all put together nicely for the defense to occur. And there has to be a number of different elements that fit in order for the battered spouse defense to be successful. And in this particular case, you know, there's a reason why people go through a lot of different attorneys. Some of them may just be stall tactics. Some may be trying to establish a certain defense. But attorneys may be, and again, I didn't talk with her, I don't know that much about the case, but attorneys may have already told her, listen, you don't meet the elements of this, or this is not going to be successful, trying to give her the benefit of their legal knowledge and background.
Or if she comes in saying, I'm the victim that the state can possibly, so this is where I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. I would think if she's trying to claim that she was the victim, all the stuff against her should, I would think, would come in as well. I would think. Or her potential alcoholism should come into play. Her past behavior with her ex. Because of the two people, it sounds like Sarah Boone is the one who has the history of being aggressive in relationships. It doesn't sound like George was the one with that history. We'll see.
She may not have been willing to accept that. She may have heard from other inmates or family members, or she may have seen court TV and thinks it may be a good idea, but the facts of that, the elements may not apply directly to her case.
Appreciate that, Dr. Brannon. We know in one of the motions that her new attorney filed, he said that he's looking for additional discovery. And of course, that caught our attention because we're thinking, what else is there? We've been talking about this case for years, Mel, but
I think, yeah, they go to the lawyer for that one. And I skipped that part in the video. Skip the legal opinion because I just want to hear from the good doctor. All right.
consulting. Would you kind of take us behind the scenes? How would that go?
Sure. So you'd want to know right away whether there's any control tactics that were being done by the victim in this case. Was there a pattern of abuse? Was it ongoing? And was the individual, the victim in this case, so controlling that she wasn't allowed to contact, be in touch with other individuals, be in touch with family members to try to get help? And did she make other attempts to try to get away from the abuse? And I'd also note that the method of death here that was utilized by Ms. Boone on the victim it would be unusual for a battered spouse case.
Exactly.
Usually the actions are impulsive. They're quick, a quick gunshot or a quick stab wound. But this type of killing is really unusual and almost unheard of for battered spouse cases. So they'd have to overcome that as well, because it appears that there's some thought, some intent, but also some lingering time for her to think about what she's done. And oftentimes those are not synonymous with battered spouse defenses.
I appreciate it, Dr. Brannon.
And normally in those types of defenses, the person in that moment, they like, because it's something that happens in that moment, they are extremely scared and they report it to the police. They immediately say, he like came at me and da, da, da. Like they immediately say what happened. They immediately report. They don't say, we were having a good day. We were doing puzzles and playing hide and go seek. I zipped them into the suitcase, which is not how hide and seek works. I will never, ever get over the fact that it was called hide and seek. If she said, so at one point, so she said 50 million different things. So she gave a lot of different versions of what happened. I think on the 911 call is I think where she said I zipped him in. And that one was probably the truth. That's the thing that makes the most sense. I don't know what was going on with them in that moment. I don't know what was happening. I know that he wanted out of the suitcase and she refused. And I think she forgot about the video. And the way that she talks about her next day is she's like, oh yeah, I woke up, he wasn't in bed and I went back to sleep. I saw these missed calls from my ex because her ex was calling her being like, are you going to pick up our son today? And then she ends up finding him and then she calls her ex. Do we all know this? Do we all know that when she found him, she did not call 911? She called her ex. And he was like, you need to call 911. And she called 3 times. His interview, his insight, I thought was really telling.
So in terms of what we may see today, Melba, as we go into the courtroom.
All right. So remember, I don't want the legal analysis. I only want to hear from this expert. I bet you he didn't know he was going to be name dropped. Let's see.
Use, and does the evidence show that she's tried other methods to try to escape from that abuse? And remember, these are difficult defenses. And the reason why they're difficult.
I think I already play that part. Did he say that part twice? He said it twice. Okay. I'll just let it play.
Because you're asking jurors to not believe what they see, but to really believe what they can't see, which is what a person's thinking and feeling. And the attorneys in this case, with their evidence, have to be able to show what she was thinking and what she told other people, and not just what she did, but what she didn't do. All those things are very, very important in establishing a battered spouse syndrome case. And this particular case, if she hasn't shown those elements, it'll be difficult to get that forward with a jury.
Appreciate it. Excellent insight from you both.
All right. So I linked that video down below. My favorite expert so far has been Dr. Brannon, and he didn't even see Sarah. So he has been my absolute favorite expert. Let me see if I can find the date of this one. It was 1 month ago. So I guess it was around September 24th or something like that. It's right when Owens came on the case. So it was sometime in September. And because but I think and I have the link to the court TV interview in the description of that video. All right. So I have the link. I always share my links. So I get so upset when somebody's reacting to something and I can't go back and see the full, and I have to find it myself. I'm pretty decent at finding things, but like it's a lot of extra work. So I try to make it easy for you all. And I put it down there. So I guess he was a former, he was, I remember that. I remember he was, I think while he was in college or he was in grad school, he was a WWF wrestler. I forgot about that. Totally forgot about that. So, y'all, we need to hear from the great Dr. Ramani. And just in case, I will link this video as well. And we need to hear about a major misconception about covert narcissism. And I might have said this wrong a few times. And so Dr. Ramani is going to clear it up for all of us. And we are going to just sit back and listen. I have, so I just put the link in the chat. I'll put it in the description later. I will be back. So I have a 1 p.m. meeting. I've been invited to possibly be on a major podcast. I will share the link if everything works out for it, but it is a true crime podcast. And so I have that interview at 1 p.m. And then right after that interview, I'm going to press go live. Okay. I will redirect this video to that video because I will be covering, I have until 4 p.m. y'all. Okay. So we can, but not like if they end early, I'll answer y'all's questions and then I'll do my case notes. But I think the evening, because the state, I think they're going to be doing this for the rest of the day. The state was only prepared for Dr. Werner's testimony to be like 30 minutes. And the defense made it like an hour and a half, maybe two. I made it like an hour and a half. And she's not done. So Dr. Werner is coming back. And so let's go ahead and hear from Dr. Ramani.
The word covert literally means unacknowledged or not acknowledged or not overtly displayed. Some people have taken covert to mean secret. Now, some people have misunderstood this to mean that a narcissistic person, then, if they're a covert narcissist, that they're hiding their narcissist in a way that it's as though they're faking it and they look good to some people. And then when they're behind closed doors, so they look good in public and then behind closed doors, they treat you horribly. That is not actually what covert narcissism is. That two-faced or Jekyll Hyde thing, that's not what covert narcissism is. Now, what is it? Listen, I have already talked about it at so much length in the 3-part series, so I'm going to keep it brief here in case.
So Dr. Ramani, if you want some more information about covert narcissism, she has a phenomenal 3-part series on it. And I like how she explains something. And I'm listening to her book, It's Not You. And what she describes is that often we focus on the narcissist and not the victim that's being harmed. The narcissist is the one that gets all of the attention, and the individual being harmed, they're not really the ones that get focused on. And she wants to help the victim. So she is the queen of healing from narcissistic abuse, from healing from this type of harm, doing education on this, where people realize, whoa, my warped sense, I cannot get over the fact Sarah Boone had the nerve to say him trying to escape being trapped in a suitcase that stop doing this to me. She said something to the effect of, as she's hitting his hand so hard it left an imprint on his brown skin, she's saying, stop doing this to me. And if that's not a better example of gaslighting, where his reality is he is dying and she's over here like, stop hurting me. But I think he was trying to leave her. I truly, truly think, and for a victim of harm, one of the scariest times is when you're planning to leave. And I wish that he hadn't been intoxicated. I don't, and I wish that the whole thing had went different. I wish he had left her quietly, but she was always home. How was he ever going to leave? How was he ever going to get free? And there are less resources for male victims of DV than there are for female victims. Because often, there are shelters for female victims. I heard of an organization, they actually have to house male victims in hotels because they don't have a house just for the males. They house them in a hotel, and they house the women in these other areas. If the men have their children, it can be hard for people to find. And so I truly do hope that this shines a light that DV can happen in heterosexual relationships, in same-sex relationships, in all types, in polygamous like in non-monogamous relationships, and monogamy. DV can happen across the board. And I think it's important. Psychological harm is real. And from what I saw, Sarah seems like she was antagonistic. Oh, let's talk about the video of him with the bat. That wasn't scary to me. Like, he seemed tired. With the first video, I heard him say, "Sarah, you're gonna help me clean this up. Like, you're gonna help me clean this mess up." And so to me, I think she told him to do that as she recorded it for her own pleasure late. Like, it's just weird. Why would you do that? Because I've had victims show me things they've recorded where they were screaming and yelling at the person. When their property was damaged, they weren't safe enough to pull out their phone and start they would have been harmed if they had started recording something. Like, cuz he was aware that she was recording him. I don't believe it for a second. Let's get into Dr. Ramani.
You haven't seen that, or you just want a refresher. Covert narcissism has also been called vulnerable narcissism. So if you hear the word vulnerable narcissism, then that is the same as covert narcissism. And this is a typology that was devised by researchers including Roningstam, Campbell, and Pincus, who felt that too much of the definition of narcissism was given over to this idea or this concept of grandiose narcissism. The sort of, you know how a grandiose narcissist is. They got all the swagger, and they're always seeking attention, and they're arrogant, and they're hyper extroverted, and they're unempathic, and they're over the top and entitled, and look at me, that kind of superficial narcissist. These researchers argued that this actually misses another important subtyping and understanding of narcissism, that sort of shamed, vulnerable, anxious, introverted, victimized, sullen, resentful, why did life pass me by kind of narcissist. While people tend to skew more to one direction or the other, some people are definitely clearly much more covert narcissists, some people are clearly more grandiose narcissists. These researchers also argue that within the same narcissist, we can see both patterns depending on how life is going for them at any given time. When you look at a grandiose narcissism for whom life is going exactly as they hope, they get the job they want, the partner they want, everything they want, they may remain grandiose. But if life turns south, the vulnerable and covert type of narcissism may come through as well. So if, let's say, they lose their job or their partner leaves them, then we may, in that same narcissist, see sadness, irritability, victimhood, passive aggression, and a general sense of resentment at the world. The confusion comes because people misinterpret that word covert, like I said. Now, the dynamic that we can see in narcissism, people who are really good at being really charming and charismatic and confident and generous with other people, can turn dark once the crowds are gone. And then when you get home or you're alone with them, the so-called life of the party becomes a really angry, rageful person once they lose their audience. People will sometimes mislabel this so-called covert narcissism because they think that the nice and confident person in public literally disappears and that the narcissist only comes out in private, like I said, in secret or covertly. That's how people use the term. It's not what it means. While a narcissist can seem two-faced, having one public face and one private face, that's not uncommon in narcissism at all. So like that, the public face for parties or the workplace, they have that's a public face. The private face is with their family or their partner. They're a narcissist at both times. So even at that party, if you try to talk to them, they still may be a jerk to you if you were even off to the side with them. In public, Their need for admiration and validation means that they damn near exhaust themselves to put on a show and get that validation. And then at home, they are so tired that they can't put on the show anymore, and they lash out at the partner. Someone whose narcissistic supply is not nearly as interesting as it once was, because, of course, narcissists love brand new supply as often as possible. And the narcissistic supply that's offered by a crowd ends up being much more satisfying for them. If anyone spent enough time with the narcissist, anyone, they would ultimately see the dark side of it. But since narcissists tend to be sprinters and not marathoners, they can have those quick bursts of charisma and charm that trick people. But this is merely a dynamic central to narcissism. Narcissism in general, grandiose, covert, malignant, whatever. And it's not just the covert narcissists that are two-faced. The victimized, angry, grievance-filled, rageful, why did life pass me by? The world owes me something. Life isn't fair. Narcissist. The one who actually is not that charming or charismatic and is actually kind of awkward in a crowd. In fact, you may have even initially felt a little bit of pity or sadness for them when you met them. That is more of the covert narcissistic pattern. With covert narcissists, you may feel compelled to sort of rescue them. They can be quite socially awkward. They can even get self-deprecating at times. They'll say something like, ugh, I can't believe I didn't get that promotion. I thought I was going to be the next one in line. I suck. What can I say? I suck. The world sucks. Nothing goes my way. That's the covert narcissist. They talk about the stuff in a victimized way, and then they'll appear anxious and sad as well. This is quite different than the larger-than-life confidence and posturing of the grandiose narcissist, who certainly, the way they conduct themselves, they don't pull for being rescued. You don't feel the need to rescue a grandiose narcissist. But then, after you attempt to rescue them, they become rageful at you for treating them as weak or offering them pity, and will resent you for viewing them that way. It's a lifetime. If you're with a covert narcissist, it's a lifetime of feeling like you can't get it right. Why? Because a covert narcissist always feels let down by life. All narcissists tend to have the Jekyll-Hyde two-faced pattern at some points. However, the term covert narcissist means that person who has that more vulnerable feel. It doesn't mean the secret narcissist. And I hope that clarifying this gives you a better handle on your experience. Covert narcissism is an extremely difficult relational pattern, and people will often report feeling exhausted at their partners or their family members or whomever's passive aggression and resentfulness and sullenness and victimhood. And because they're not walking around and bragging, you'll often feel like maybe if I reassure them enough, they'll finally be happy. Trust me, there ain't enough reassurance in the world. Hope that clarifies that. If you have any thoughts or comments, as always, please drop them in the comments.
Y'all, I have been talking for like, I'm so sorry. Elaine, we really are professional. We really are professional here. I'm so sorry. Let me restart that. Oh my gosh. And the first time is always, I always do a better job the first time. I'm sorry. We have to do this again, but let's do it real quick. So, I do not think that there's this epidemic of narcissism, that everyone is narcissistic in every situation, that every defendant has narcissism. Now, when I watch a case, I'm looking for psychological questions and aspects. And so I want to talk about these things. I had a moment. So I graduated with my doctorate in clinical psychology in 2009. Do you want to know what else happened in 2009? The market crashed. And I was an unemployed doctor for 3 months. And it was a huge I got depressed. Because my student loans were going to start coming due in 6 months after graduation, and my student loans, I had over 2 almost it wasn't over. I had almost $200,000 of student loan debt. And while I had acute stress. I probably should have went to therapy at that time. I didn't. I was extremely stressed. I My thoughts got dark. It was a very, very dark period of time in my life. My family, thankful, was helpful and they were supportive. And I got into about $17,000 of credit card debt because I was paying my student loans, I was paying my mortgage, but I wasn't making enough to pay it to pay for everything else. Because I was thinking when I get my doctorate that I'm gonna be like, I thought I was making like 60,000, 70,000 the year. So once I did find a job, I think I made maybe 10, $15,000. I'm not no lie. No, like the year after I graduated, because the only job I could find was as a resident, where part of my work that I did, I would I would get a percentage of the work I did. And a lot of things happened and I ended up having to get a second job. And that second job, I was getting paid 25, I think no, it wasn't even $25. It might have been 20, it was between 22 and maybe $25 an hour. And I applied for a job at Rappahannock Area Community Services Board, my local community services board. And I will never forget Dr. Dixon. I interviewed with him. I felt highly qualified, but he looked at me and he was like, you like to help people, and he was like, this job, it's I'm paraphrasing, this wasn't exactly what he said, but the gist of it was he didn't think I would survive there, and he would be looking to hire a new psychologist within like very, very quickly. And so I did not get that job. My ego, like I was so hurt. I was so upset. So I graduated with my PsyD, with my doctorate in psychology. And so that instance, that situation, um and I hadn't really recovered a lot of my people pleasing at that time. I was very much still a people pleaser. I didn't have great professional boundaries at that time. I used to see clients all time of the day and all of those things. And so I am grateful that I didn't get that job, but in that moment, I probably was a little like I was a little upset. It was everything worked out. Things worked out fine. That was how I ended up working with the company that I ended up working with until COVID, until 2020, before I started my own private practice, around that time in 2020, I started my social media and all that stuff. But I will put the link for this down below. And just how some people can be narcissistically defended. And this is a concept that I heard first from Dr. Joe Court. And so I want to get to y'all's questions because y'all are asking some good ones. So, do you think Sarah will be found guilty or not guilty? So, I need to hear more of the rebuttal evidence, and I want to see some of the reactions of the jury. I think Owens was way too aggressive, in my opinion, my personal opinion, with the with the state expert, which to the jury could come off that he's like trying to get her to not say, I don't know, like it seemed distracting. What he was doing seemed distracting to me. And so let's see. Lisa, I know. And Lisa, I probably he was right. I would have quit. If he had offered me that job, if I had got it, I probably would have quit within 2 to 3 years. Because at the community services board, the amount of therapy people have to do is absolutely ridiculous. So Dr. Warner hasn't finished her testimony yet. I actually agree probably with Dr. Brannon. I liked Dr. Brannon's testimony. I think a lot of what he said applies to Sarah Boone. And I think the state is going to introduce evidence of Sarah's harm towards George. And so we will see what happens. Dr. Brannon was called by the defense, but he never met with Sarah. He can't say what happened. And I don't think Dr. Harper's just my person. So I don't, she met with her 9 times, 9 times, 9 times, but only did 3 tests. And so I wanted to know how many hours all of that was. I think Surviving the Survivor is in the courtroom. I think Jules is feeling sick, so I don't think Jules is there today. So those are some of the people I've been following on there. I thought Dr. Harper was very much on Sarah's side and very much believed that Sarah was the victim, but I don't think she didn't talk to Brian Boone to figure out what Sarah's personality was before. And she didn't have to, but it would have been nice for somebody to figure out to have like corroborating evidence, like to talk to somebody else. Um yeah. And so I think if he had, I think he would have been a state's witness. Based on Dr. Brandon doesn't seem like he doesn't seem like he plays, because if you're afraid for your life, you don't go upstairs and go to sleep. You just don't, in my personal opinion. And Sarah didn't stay on the stand the if I die, I die. I don't think she said that. But that was just uh, yeah. So it was to me, it wasn't as bad. So Dr. Lewis she didn't come across credible at all. I did feel that Dr. Harper's testimony came across credible, and I am a little scared that at least one of the jurors, but I think Dr. Harper might get Sarah down to manslaughter. I'm not sure if Dr. Harper's testimony gets her to not guilty. I could see Dr. Harper's testimony and those pictures and that wound, but we will see. Please protect your mental health. Like, go and drink some water, eat some lunch. There will be about 30 minutes until court starts back. I need to do the redirect. Let me do that now. Let me redirect you all to the next stream. It says it's going to start at 2, but I'm going to start it as soon as my meeting is over. So I have a meeting, and then right after that meeting, I'm going to come back with covering this case. I have until, I think I have until 5 p.m. Wait a minute. Yeah, y'all. I have until 5 p.m. today after this meeting. I have enjoyed hanging out with you all. I will go back and add what's the word? I will go back and add titles, chapters later. Okay. Let's redirect to the next stream. All right. I will see you all a little later. Please go hang out with Emily D. Baker or Recovery Addict or Lori Reese. There are a lot of phenomenal people streaming. If you catch my opinions on replay, the replay crew is my favorite crew, and I do. So I stream hop, and I appreciate you all. I'll see y'all later today. Bye. I need to set my outro. There we go. Bye. Y'all have a good one.